Hindi ko alam kung saan ang pagyan.
Marge, magdali magtanong. Kung yun lang ang bibili mo, diretso na doon. Wala. Kung malayo, malalaman.
Okay, we have about 6 participants now, including me, Ben Lorque, Mr. Manuel Astillero.
Yes, yes.
How are you, sir? Can you introduce yourself to the group?
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
You're from what province, Manuel? What province are you in from Manuel? Yung province mo, Manuel, can you hear me?
Cavite ako, Cavite.
Cavite. Okay, I'll be coming near to the mic now so that I can be heard some more. Kasi wala pa akong nabiling microphone, no? Na diretso papunta sa computer. Kaya I'm just using the microphone of the computer, and if I'm not facing it, I tend to be very far away. Is my voice clear now?
I can hear you. I got it.
Okay, it's now good. Okay. I was telling people that perhaps we can remind the other members that we have that the meeting is about to start. So just a quick PM to them if you have the time to do it. That should be good. In about 5 more minutes, we will start the session. We have no problems naman lang. Now, I think since today I will be rising on a point of privilege, I'll be presenting something to the session. I will ask Ben Lorque to chair, and I think I will put him as a co-host right now so that he can chair it and conduct the meeting while I take the floor to deliver my point of privilege. I will do that right now. I'll try to configure the stream so that I can make Ben Lorque co-host. I'm not very good at that. Let's see, what I can do. Supposedly, I can do this. Okay.
No problem. Please go ahead.
Okay, just a minute. Okay. All right. Okay, about 8:15, we'll be starting 4 minutes from now. So remind your other friends to join. Right now, they are not yet, I think, in the meeting. Okay. Okay. I think Vicente Domingo requested that he also would like to present something to us as a privilege point. But he's traveling right now to the Zambales area. He said that he will try to connect from there. If he has a connection, he would like to talk about agricultural policy. Before that, I'll be presenting and giving the chair right now to Ben. Ben, you will now be acting as the presiding officer. I will have to go to the floor, and I would like to rise on a point of privilege. Ben, can you recognize me so that I can start my presentation?
Yes, pero hindi pa ko gaano marunong yan, baka pumalpak.
Fine. Dr. Posadas is around, and I think this is our rules are simple. It's the simplified version of the Robert's Rule of Order. It's a coincidence that the name of Robert Posadas, Dr. Posadas is also Robert, so you could always intervene on a point of order if something is amiss. Mabuti yan, mag-practice ka ng gusto kasi dadami na mga members mo sa seaman mo eh. You have to deal with them. Okay, so I will now, I think I will have to go and record to the cloud. So we are now starting, as I've said. Okay, I am relinquishing the chair. The speaker is supposed to Ben Lorque, who is a leader in the Seaman's group in the Philippines. So, Mr. Lorque, Chairman, Mr. Speaker Lorque, can you recognize me now on a point
Yes.
of privilege?
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and do not expect that I am expert on this matter, but I will try. I will do all my best.
Okay, I'm rising on a point of privilege to explain the basis and the rationale, the mission that we have as a group in this 1899 movement and shadow Congress of the country.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Speaker, I'll be sharing my screen. Okay, so and anybody who's not speaking, may I request them to mute their thing except for the speaker, Ben Lurke, so that there will be no unnecessary noise in our meetings. Well, we see that there are some more people coming in. Jingle just came in. So I'll now be sharing my screen. I'd like to check whether my screen is being shared. Okay, is my screen now being shared?
Yeah.
Okay, can you see my screen? I just put up the PowerPoint presentation with the title, "Are you part of the solution or part of the problem?" Everybody sees this panel, this screen?
No, I haven't seen it. I can see it.
You can see it right now?
I can.
You can see it now?
No.
I cannot see the screen. No, sorry.
Okay, is it being shared now?
No, still no sharing.
The picture we could see is only you.
Mr. Chairman, I think it is because only the host can share screen.
What is the problem? Why can't I share it?
Because you're no longer the host.
I think I can still share.
Now you can see it. Now I can see it.
Yeah, we can see it. We can see it
Yeah.
now.
Thank
Oh, you can see it now? That's good. Okay. That's fine. We old people have to master this new technology with some effort, you know? Kasi mas magagaling sa atin ng mga bata sa bagay na to. Tayo ay nakikigaya lang sa kanila. But my first screen is asking the question, are you part of the solution or part of the problem? And I refer to the iron law of oligarchy, which is a political theory developed by German sociologist Robert Michels in 1911. his theory states that all complex organizations, including nation states, regardless of how democratic they are when started, eventually develop into oligarchies. To promote the social dynamics that will countervail this iron law of oligarchy, a polity needs to have stable and sound protocols that would allow the emergence of political leaders that can counter the tendency towards dominant oligarchic control. We do not have that in the Philippines. What we have is an oligarchic deadly loop that sustains and perpetuates the electoral insanity that we go through every 3 years. In the next slide, which is now a flow chart, in effect, you would see the arrows that are circular. At the northeast corner, it says rent-seeking oligarchs pay off election cheating syndicates. And then it moves to another flow process. This cheating syndicate subject COMELEC to regulatory capture. Then it goes to a process of this COMELEC cheating syndicates manufacturing sets of elective officials according to preferences of the oligarch masters they hire out to. In turn, these manufactured elected officials provide rent-seeking opportunities like corruption to their oligarch backers. And it goes ahead and they flow into a process where the oligarchs extract inordinate profits through control of public utilities and other opportunities provided by the elected officials in their packets. And it goes into another southwest corner saying this process, the oligarchs again prepare their war chest derived from this inordinate profits for the next election cycle. And this vicious circular flow is sustained ad infinitum. This is the situation that we find ourselves now. And we have difficulty getting out of this because those who are now presenting themselves as leaders of the nation, prospective candidates for the presidency, they don't talk about this vicious loop. They present themselves as, we are the better man to do it. Like I heard the presentation of Senator Gordon the other day to his, somebody should please mute.
Can somebody mute their, because I heard some voices.
Yes, maybe it is a jingle. Can you mute yourself or who else is not speaking right now? Can you mute? Okay, I don't hear anything now. I can proceed. Now, they present themselves. I was talking about prospective candidates for president, which is still there. I think it is not there yet. No. Well, I cannot. It will go into the recording, and it will not be good.
Somebody still unmute the. Can anybody who does not unmute their audio, can you please unmute it?
No, they have to mute themselves.
No, it's already
they have to mute. They have to mute so that they will not be heard. Because if you have it on open and not muted, you can be heard. So please mute your speakers.
I heard no more.
Okay, it's gone. Okay.
No more.
So going back to this loop, I was saying that this loop is a continuous loop which is not interrupted by the election cycle, because the election cycle itself was captured by this vicious loop controlled by oligarchs in combination with mercenary COMELEC syndicates. And I was saying the candidates presenting themselves operate within the loop. They do not get out of the loop. They just present themselves as the better person to cooperate with these oligarchs. That they are also promising to do some change, but as we have seen in a system like this, people like that, good people like that, are swallowed by this system, and they have no chance, after all, of promoting whatever changes they are espousing. So we are in this situation right now, and we have a problem. And the rational response is to find a solution. And that is why we have groups like this, and we are gathered in this Congress today to discuss this problem and to find a solution for the morass, the political insanity that we are in. So what is Duterte doing? That's Duterte. Look at him. This was a cartoon I borrowed from the Manila Times. Look at that. He is there, giving him the benefit of the doubt. He is ardently trying to balance things. But I think right now, he has just been overwhelmed by what he has to deal with. He's balancing between the US and China. He's balancing between healthcare and the economy. He's balancing between the oligarchy, Too Big Ilaw, Telco, and the people. He's balancing between Sara and Bongo, who is in continuous intramurals. He's balancing between COMELEC, smartmatic cheaters, padded voters in the millions, and the ambitions of his chosen presidential successors. He's also balancing between rationality and insanity in this political system of ours. So being overwhelmed, dead man na lang siya. That's the easy way out. It seems to be like that. Sabi niya, pagod na ako, alis na ako, kayo na lang. So he seems to have already quit the field of actual control. He would burst sometimes into some expletive polemics, but beyond that, parang hindi na niya control ang situation. The COMELEC situation that's talking about is also exemplified by this meme. This is apocryphal. We don't know if this conversation took place, but this shows you how top-notcher positions in the Senate with the existing padded million voters are easily manipulated. And you see here Cynthia Villar, the recent top-notcher in the Senate elections, asking James Jimenez, bakit ang boto niya mas marami kaysa botante? And the reply, of course, is, kasi ma'am, sobrang malaki ang bayad niyo sa amin. Yan ang kalagayan ngayon. I understand, and I think our chairman, Speaker Ben Lorque, can attest to that. When he was running for party list, he had to have 35 million to bribe this COMELEC syndicates to be able to get registered and win a seat in the party list Congress. So most of this party list are known by a lot of people in the Congress as being manufactured by the COMELEC. You get a congressional seat for a fee, and the going rate is about that. According to Speaker Ben Lorque, it's about 35 million the last time he was charged and assessed for the fee. So this kind of situation it explains why our civilian elected tribunes always protect the interest of the oligarchy rather than protect the interest of the people. So you have situations where in this Congress tries to redefine public utilities into public services so that they can invite in total foreign control of these services. This is the proposal of Congressman Salceda, who is saying that, hey, mas mabuti pa, para mas efficient ang ating public utilities, let us invite the foreigners to do it. So it looks like a proposal that is jumping from the frying pan to the fire. But who cares? They are not beholden to the people. They're beholden to the oligarchs because the oligarchs provide them the money to win their elections. So it's a vicious cycle that was explained by the loop I just presented earlier. So what are the innards of this thing? Of course, we have to show evidence of what we're talking about. So this next slide, which you're looking at now, is showing us the padded votes in the elections that happened from 1987 onwards to 2019. Based on that, this is just a process of demographic analysis, wherein I just looked at the increase in the population rate of the country as provided by the census and the Philippine Statistical Authority. And I looked at the increase in actual registered voters. And you will see that those red rows have problems because in those red rows, we have a lot of padded votes. As I'm pointing out, it was about only 1.5 million in 1992, but it rose up to a minimum of 12.8 million in 2019. So these are the ammunition that the COMELEC cheating syndicates use when trying to deliver a ranking in the Senate that was paid for by sponsors of this senators vying for office. That's another problem of our political makeup. We have a Senate that is 24 senators, and this was already 24 senators at the time when the Philippines only had 9.5 million people in 1916. Now it is more than a century later. We are now 110 million people, about more than 10 times the 9 million before, but we still have only 24 senators. If we go by proportionate ratios between population and the Senate seats, it should be around 84 senators right now. At the same time, this problematic situation of this dinosaur Senate had been compounded by the fact that they reverted from senatorial districts to national district representation. Maybe that national set was sort of doable at the time when we have less population. They did that during the Commonwealth period, the period when Quezon made that change. But now that we have 110 million people and we have 60 million voters to present your case to, it becomes an impossible task for the senators to run for office on their own resources or even of their own circuit of friends. They have begun to rely on oligarch sponsors to be able to do this national campaign and get to a position of the Senate. And since the Senate is too narrow, just 24 people, any oligarch that bets on a senator will surely be able to exert influence on policy because of the lack of people in the Senate right now. Even opposition senators are chairing committees, which is really problematic because you could not now pinpoint responsibility of who is handling the policies of the nation, which emanates from the Senate, because they are a national policy-making body. Kasi wala na silang tao, konti-konti lang sila, kahit na opposition ka, may chairmanship ka pa rin ng committee. Okay? So that is not good. Supposedly, a majority decision has to be made so that it's very clear that there is a majority in charge and that if things go awry, then the people throw them out in the next elections. This is no longer so in our Senate. Our Senate is so confused. It's just a personal fiefdom of egotistic personalities who are always bragging that they are a republic unto themselves. And that's a lot of bullshit as far as the Philippine interest is concerned. So that Senate has to be discarded, has to be remade, and has to be changed. And the Bayanihan Constitution Commission, which made some proposals, have expanded the Senate and reverted back to senatorial district elections. And the senators don't like that because their egos as potential presidential contenders would be bruised, and they would not like to have that anymore. Kasi ang tingin nila, pag magkasenador ka na, that is stepping stone to a national constituency that will propel you to the presidency. That's kabuang talaga ng ating political system. But going back to this thing, I'm showing you here this process of vote padding. And 1987 was relatively clean because at that time we just had a process of what you call the People Revolt in EDSA, although it might be a misnomer. But at that time, Ramon Felipe made an effort to clean up the voters list. So we had a relatively clean election in terms of voters during the 1987 elections, senatorial elections. That's what was that was what was held at the time. But in the subsequent years, you see an addition of 1.5 million votes, and then 4.7 million again in 1995. That was because of the effect of the very narrow victory of Fidel Ramos over Miriam Defensor, and a lot of people said that Ramos was not really the winner of that election, it was Defensor. And so Ramos, in his cohorts, padded the voters list in 1995, so that they will get a majority in the Senate election, the midterm Senate elections. And this was when the infamous Dagdag Bawas came in, and the most prominent victim here was the late Senator Nene Pimentel. Now, what happened between 1995 and 1998? Ramos had the ambition of trying to run again as president. So he initiated the PIRMA. In the PIRMA, you are required to have 3% to amend the constitution in each congressional district, and a total of 12% of the total registered voters of the Philippines. So to be able to reach that figure, Fidel Ramos asked for a new registration. In that new registration, about 5 million voters were taken off the list. You see this gap between 1995 and 1998 in the column actual registered actual registered voters. It dropped from 36 million to 34 million. But that is just a net drop because at that time, there was also an increase already of population between 1995 and 1998. But the gross drop was about that much, 5 million, the one that was padded in 1995. So 1998 was one of our cleanest elections as far as the vote padding is concerned. Since a coup was launched against Arab in 2001, the new president, PGMA, was just so busy trying to consolidate her power, which was dubious at best because of the invention of that constructive resignation doctrine of a rogue Supreme Court, which elevated itself above its constitutional source. The padded voters in the election in the COMELEC was not increased. It remained at the zero. But then Gloria appointed Ben Harabalos, the very notorious Abalos, was involved in that China deal, there's NTE, CTE deal. So what happened was that at the time, everything that Ramos took out in 1995 inadvertently because of his ambition to be re-elected was put back in 2004. So we see now again 4.8 million voters padded here. And that was when a very popular Fernando Poe, who was more popular than Joseph Estrada, lost to GMA. And that was also the infamous phrases getting popular at the time was the "Hello, Garci, And I'm sorry, those are the very important phrases that became so popular at this time because of the cheating that happened in 2004. So now we go forward. This from 2004, 2007, you see all of those recorded added voters there. And this has remained so. And in 2010, it was at 6.5 million. This was when we saw the phenomena of Lauren Legarda, the most popular senatorial candidate, being outranked by a novice called, Grace Poe. And at one point, the votes of Grace Poe also went beyond the numbers of voters that could vote in the election. And the Comelec Smartmatic at that time, because it was the first time it was being used, just said it's just a computer glitch and nothing more. So what happened was that it was not Lauren Legarda who became top-notcher, but it was Grace Poe. In 2013, we again have these problems of senators even not being able to really become or sit as part of the Senate immediately because there were problems with some people supposedly being manufactured. Or then this was when I think Coco Pimentel was cheated by Miguel Subiri. So problems galore was also there. This was also the year when Glenn Chong exposed the way he was cheated as congressman in Biliran. These are recorded in most of the social media missives that we have. In 2016, we have about 5.8 million votes there. And according to the anecdotal recounting of things during this presidential election, Duterte almost had 21 million votes, and this padding arsenal was not able to cope with it. So the only person that they cheated at the time was Bongbong Marcos, whose actual margin over Robredo was only about 2 million. So the padded voters list was put to use, and the rest right now is history wherein Bongbong was cheated. And the cheating went on into our electoral grievance system, and it took 5 years to hear that case, and then they just destroyed it and put it away on a technicality. Now, what happened in 2016 to 2019? This was when a massive padding of the votes was done by Sharif, the current Comelec commissioner now, chairman. During this period of time, if you look at the population column from 2016 to 2019, our population increased from 103 million to 107 million, or roughly about 4 million only, right? But if you look at the actual registered increase, the row, our actual registered voters increased from 54.4 million to 63.65 million, 66 million. Well, you see, while our population increased by only 4 million, our registered voters increased by 9 million. How was that? Whenever there is an increase in population, you put cohort analysis on that, and you just count the 18 years old and above who can actually register. Those are the expected registrants. And the increase in registrants is just about 2.7 million based on the 4.0 or 4.2 million increase in population. So this whole thing shows a padding of about 6.3 million, net padding of 6.3 million, what happened during 2016 to 2019. And so whatever you speculate, that padding is there, and that has happened. So now, this is the way it is. This is the way the Comelec uses this as ammunition, this padded voters, to do it, together with the Smartmatic capability. Any automated election system, if the input is garbage, the output is also garbage. you have an input of padded voters in the process of doing the AAS, the automated election system. So you also get rotten garbage output in terms of cheated results in what is turned out by the system. Another table that sustains what we are talking about is this. This is where I identified in the last column the allegations of Defensor, FDR cheating Mariam Defensor with the padded voter that was increased then overtly at 705,103. You know, padding is done two ways. You increase the votes directly. Usually you do it by transferring the barangay 15-year-old into an 18-year-old category to increase the padded voters. And you also do not unregister people who are dead, and you do not take out the original registrations of people who are transferring. So with that, padded voters happen. And the 705,000 you see there for 1992, that is the overt padding. That is not the residual padding that happens through through the transfer of voters and through the death of voters, mortality of voters. So you see here, again, in 1995, as I explained already, Fidel Ramos and his cohorts padded the elections registries, and we have about 2 million that was padded there directly into this process. There was nothing that happened in 1998 in 2001, as I explained, but then directly then in 2004, under Abalos, 4 million was overtly added to the list. In 2010, the beginning of the elections of using automated elections under Chairman Melo, 2.3 million was added into the list. So this accumulated padding showed you just was accumulated into that row earlier, wherein I was showing you why we have a cumulative increase of padded voters here in this last column. Now let's go to this other slide that shows you the padded ghost voters ending in 2014. In 2019, the estimated high padded list is 14.7 million. Okay, and these other columns here are more demographic data, which you can study and I can explain to you further. But they are self-explanatory, and the record of this presentation will be there, so you can look at them on your own. Last February 2021, the COMELEC took out about 6.3 net, around 7 million gross padded voters. They said that, or padded list deactivated about 7 million, saying that these people are the ones that have not voted for 2 consecutive elections. But if you will note, it's also equivalent to that overpadding that they did when the voters increased, registered voters increased by 9 million, while our population increased only by 4 million. So they sort of corrected that en masse last February, but they just corrected it on their own. Nobody can interfere with what they do. Nobody can check COMELEC. They're not audited because they are an independent constitutional body. And the unintended effect is that they do whatever they want, like charging Speaker Ben Lorque 35 million just to be able to get a congressional seat. So that is how they do these things. They own the COMELEC, they sell you this thing. It is no different than what happened to the time when Rome was decaying, when the Praetorian Guards were selling the position of emperor to whoever would be able to pay. That is what the COMELEC is doing to us right now. So you see here in this graph, it shows you what I was talking about. The red lines are the increase in population. The blue lines, and the red lines are the increase in registered voters. So you will see in 1987, the increase in population between 1987 to 1992 was 7.7 million. and the increase in registered voters is only that much, 3.5 million. So you see in 92, 95, when Ramos padded the senatorial elections, you see that the increase in population was much less than the increase in registered voters. These are signals that padding is happening. The period from 95 to 98 shows you that the 4.5 million increase in population was also negated by the purge that the new registration did. So there's a net minus of 2.3 million during that period. This was when the Ramos purge happened, where 5 million voters were taken out of the list. And we had a clean election with ERAP winning with a landslide. And so you see the difference between the 95, 98 elections and the 2004 elections, wherein you already have Abalos in control. You see them here, that the popular candidate Fernando Poe was defeated, but the difference is that he's more popular than ERAP, but he lost the elections because of the existence of this padded voters. This is empirical data. We are not making up anything. This can be verified in all of the data that is available from the Population Statistical and PSA Authority, Census and PSA, and also the records of these election registries are published records of the COMELEC. So you see here what I was talking about, this time of Abbas, the one labeled as Abbas. You see there was just an increase of 4.6 million in the population of the country during the interval between 2016 and 2019, but our registered voters increased by 9.3 million. This alone already is a factual indictment of what is happening in our COMELEC. And that is what created a demand for the abolition of COMELEC, abolition of Smartmatic. But after a few noises by Digong that he will try to do something about it, we still have the Smartmatic there, COMELEC there, and we have the padded votes there. In fact, the new information that they have released based on data is that they now have 4.8 million new voters. But in fact, the increase of population between 2019 and 2022 is just about 4 million. So there's again the fact that only 2.7 million of this can be qualified to register. But they already are bragging that they have 4.8 million already registered as new voters. And so that means to say they have added another 2 million to the existing 7 million padded votes there. And we now have a total of about approximately 9 million padded voters in COMELEC registries. That is a fact, and that can be empirically verified with simple demographic arithmetic. So these are the people responsible for doing that. The oligarchs, they are, as I've shown in that oligarchic loop, they hire those COMELEC people to have their candidates, and their candidates give them money. They get the money, prepare for the next election, and the cycle starts all over again. Now, who are these oligarchs? These are the oligarchs. Even before in 2015, they were already identified by the movement of Ardia Avellana, the consumers group, as the ones reaping a lot of millions of pesos in terms of the rates that they had been exacting from the people, including the advance payments for the development of sewage facilities, which they never did. You see these people here, Maynila, you have Manila Water, which now is Ayala and owned now by Razon. And then you have these other groups also now coming in, like Prime Water, and that's it. And it is not a wonder that right now, if you count all of these things that should be refunded by these people to us, the consumers of this water, it would actually abolish their equity positions, and it can be easily controlled by government. But that kind of accounting and that kind of point of view is not even being discussed in our mainstream media. Simple arithmetic, simple accounting arithmetic, assets and plus liabilities minus liabilities equals equity. The liabilities of the people are so much already. So it has abolished and sort of obliterated their assets, and the people now, through government, should be taking over these utilities, but they are not. Why? Because these oligarchs control the policymakers in both the executive as well as in the Congress. You know, Congress passes the laws favorable to them, and then the executives under their control, who are just some of them are their own employees that become cabinet members, who are responsible for creating IRR, implementing rules and regulations, make sure that this doesn't happen. So that is why we see that this country of ours is actually something like enemy-controlled territory, and the enemy are the oligarchs controlling this process of rent-seeking, this process of controlling what we should have as a people, which we should benefit from. This is happening in the public utilities sector, and this is happening in the natural resources sector, where they exploit them without giving us, the stakeholders, any part of the exploitation. That happened in Malampaya, exploitation of the Malampaya resources. And it was tragic that although our constitution says we should have 60% of it, the actual sharing of control and profit was just 90% for them, the foreign-sponsored oligarchs, and only 10% for the government. That is really shameful. With friends like that in government and in the foreign investment sector, who needs enemies? So, proceeding further, let's look again here. This is the statement released by Puno. He said that it will take more than quiet words to change this status quo, protected and secured by political dynasties who will not yield their monopoly of political power and the economic elite that established a new monarchy, the monarchy of the moneyed, and will not, never give up their throne. That's from Renato Puno. A very similar quote comes from Mao Zedong. A revolution is not a dinner party, or writing an essay, or painting a picture, or doing embroidery. It cannot be so refined, so leisurely and gentle, so temperate, kind, courteous, restrained, and magnanimous. A revolution is an insurrection, an act of violence by which one class overthrows another. Yes?
Rotan, ay. Ito na ratang kay ganyan. Karne ka. Puta, dadala puta.
Please mute yourself as you come in. Please mute.
Diba? Baik na eh. Puta ka naman ka rin. Ilaw. Puta, sakit mo. Baka naman.
Yung bagong
Someone
pumasok,
just came in and is not muted.
Maraming bukas. Ano yung yatang manok? Alin lang. Bukas ng marami.
Attention of the
Ano
room.
kinakain mo pong netong ni Aljan po?
Ano kalakihin yan?
yung bagong pasok, pwede pakimute mo
Hindi
na.
naman po siya.
Meeting ko yan eh. Akin lang.
Hello? Pakimute nyo muna kasi narinig pa ang boses ninyo. Okay, wala na.
Okay. All right. So, Tigong said that he has dismantled the oligarchy. This is a cartoon I borrowed from the Manila Times. So he cut it. This was a cartoon that was published during the time when the ABS-CBN was closed. So by that, he claims that he has dismantled the oligarchy. But is that really so? You see that he has equivocated in his positions regarding the oligarchy. In July of 2020, he was congratulating himself after that closure of the ABS-CBN, and that he said he is now in control of the economy. But then, 1 year less than a year later, he was making this statement. He delivers a rare apology on May 4 for lashing out at business tycoons in the past, particularly to the Ayala Group and businessman Manuel Pangilinan. You will note that at this time, Ayala was bought out by Razon. The water interest of Ayala was bought out by Razon, and Manuel B. Pangilinan was also active helping in the pandemic. So because of that, Duterte ate his words and made apologies to them. So we see here that this equivocation of Duterte is not at all in the interest of the people. So we're back to this situation wherein this oligarchy are untouchables. They control us. Our country is like an oligarch-occupied enemy territory, and we have to take it back. We have to go through a process of fighting to bring the country back into the control of the people. Because right now we are controlled, we are manipulated, we are in a very vicious loop where we have to get out of to free ourselves and reclaim our patrimony and avoid being exploited through iniquitous deals in water and electric monopolies and oligopolies. So, do we have to resort to the gun? We have to ask the military to intervene because elections has been suppressed. We cannot do things through elections. Our elections has been a Mickey Mouse election process. Our local elections have some credibility because some degree of control is maintained by vigilant local people, especially if they are not totally dominated by a political dynasty. But in other areas, because of the proliferation of political dynasts, it's almost the same. It's controlled. They do retail vote buying, they do wholesale digital cheating, and the COMELEC rapid proclamation and bahala na kayo sa protesta, wala namang mangyayari dyan. The electoral reform mechanism or redress mechanism is not operational. So the cheating is made to stick until the next 3-year cycle of political insanity sets in again in the next elections. You ask the military to do it. And the military, of course, in any society is always the first to form, like our traditional tribal groups. The person who is the strongest is the warrior chieftain and leads the tribe. That kind of tradition has been carried forward as more complex national organized polities reemerge. The military is still the core thing. There are three main functions of the society, of a state, to be not a failed state. It should be able to defend its territory. It should be able to have logistics, finance, and provide the subsistence and nurturing of life for its people, food and everything else. And it should have a foreign relations that is strong enough so that it can align with friends and fight foes together. Those three areas, which are the defense, finance, logistics, and foreign affairs, those are the three basic things. But foremost on that, without the military, we don't have a state. And we have experienced this in 1898, when our military was defeated by American intervention. Our republic folded up, and our constitution, the 1899 constitution, which is our Dihori constitution, a fully sovereign constitution created by a free people, became silent. But it has never been abrogated. So, what do we do with this legislation? We know that the basis of civilian supremacy over military authority are clean elections, but we don't have them. So we're asking now, in 2022, if the Philippine political class condones and abets this coming rape of our elections, then the army must correct it. In their role as constitutional protectors of the people, the military should demand a COMELEC digital audit by COA because of the presence of millions of padded voters in COMELEC registers. Our automated election systems, just like any computer application, will have a garbage in, garbage out situation if the cleanup of our election registries is not done, and our electoral sovereignty will be raped again in 2022. It is to protect the people from the impending assault on their untrammeled election voting rights in 2022 that justifies the demand for a voter registry cleanup by the military. And we can use the 1899 Philippine Constitution as a reset button. Once enforced by our 124-year-old Philippine Army, whose antecedent, the Katipunan Army, lived and died under this 1899 Philippine Constitution, then the writ of this Constitution will again be followed throughout the land. It provides us with a legal interregnum to be able to do a process of transition peacefully to a new ordered system where the COMELEC will be curtailed and abolished, where our senators will be put in proper place because we now have a federal parliamentary setup. And this gift from our forefathers should be taken advantage of by our people right now. We have legal luminaries like this guy, Aldi Tangpol, who argues that the Philippine Constitution is alive and binding. We have Melchor Magnamo, who says the same thing. And our legal professions have to be educated. They have to recognize the fact that their jurisprudence does not end as a penultimate reference to the 1935 Constitution. The 1935 Constitution is an American puppet constitution imposed on us. It was signed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt with Manuel L. Quezon just being a photo bomber during that signatory ceremonies. The Laurel Constitution is a puppet constitution of the Japanese. Please mute, please mute. Somebody should go into the gallery view and see who is not unmuted and should be muted. Now, let's do this. Let's look at this process as a resort, as a recourse for us. And this constitutional volcano that we are looking at, process of dehibernating, the 1898 Constitution, has a peaceful process within it in Section 94, the Les Miserables magnanimity principle, wherein existing situations can be subsumed and absorbed and changed in an evolutionary manner. All that is needed is for the leadership within our armed forces to muster the political will to enforce the writ of the 1899 Constitution. And to help the Army muster that political will is our mission. So let's listen to this video.
What's happening? Ben Lorque, what's happening?
The video being shared.
No, the video does not have.
Okay. I will stop sharing now and I will end my presentation. There's supposed to be a video playing, but the video is not being shown, right?
There is no audio.
No audio. Okay. Yeah. So this video actually is being seen by you without an audio. But in the copy that we have in the 1899 YouTube, this it has a video. It has an audio. It explains what is happening. So let us just view this. Let us just finish this. And after this, then we proceed to interpolation. So calling for a resurrection government under the 1899 Constitution so that we can reset the country, abolish the COMELEC, have new elections under a different electoral body in our Constitution. So you see this process, it will be something that we can cut short if you would like to go into a process of interpolation now. I will stop the sharing and I can now, Mr. Speaker, entertain questions.
By the way, any question for the shown video by Professor Hill Ramos, and then you could comment.
Yes, I have a question.
Just wait a minute, I'm trying to close my system.
So Ben, you're opening table for questions?
Yeah. Mr. Emmanuel Astillero, you are recognized.
Okay, ang tanong ko kay Gil Ramos, ang strategy na sinasabi niya is to master the military to effect changes in the COMELEC. But we must remember that the president is the commander-in-chief of the military. And the chain of command is very clear. So unless you have a revolutionary military group, they will wait for the president to say, to issue the command. Yun lang. Thank you.
Professor Hill?
I think that's true. The military is under the commander-in-chief. That is why the call is on the military, and that includes the call on the commander-in-chief. Now, the military structure has a hierarchy. And, in the battlefield, if a lieutenant is shot down and killed, or a captain is shot down and killed, the lieutenant takes over. If the lieutenant becomes a casualty, then the sergeant takes over, and the military mission continues. We're not talking about the death of Duterte here. We're just talking about his incapability to perform what he has to do as a duty as a protector of the people. We are outlining the conditions of persecution and assault on our electoral sovereignty that is happening consistently, not only in one election, but in several elections. And we have empirical data to back it up. So as a response, we're calling on them to do that. And we'll continue calling on them. And we're saying to peacefully shift and continue and resuscitate their allegiance to the 1898-99 Constitution. Through that, we are able to abolish COMELEC, we are able to reset things, and we are able to renew our process of governance.
Well, may I, Ben?
Yes, yes.
The key to the strategy of mastering the military, which is under the command of the president, is they will look up to the president to issue the command. And the president is part of the problem, as you explained. So, paano ba yun? Hindi, palagay ko, hindi issue ni Duterte yung command to dismantle the COMELEC, etc. Dahil nakikinabang siya role sa system na yon. He will have to follow constitutional process. The military cannot act by itself. Thank you.
Manuel, idagdag lang ko dyan na civilian is over military, and we have to consider that military are protectorate of the people. So if the military is using their common sense, then they have to obey the Constitution.
Oo nga, Ben, accepted yan. But remember that the civilian command of the military, the expression of that civilian command is the president. The president is not military, he is civilian. But he is the commander-in-chief. At kung nakikinabang ang presidente sa sistema na dinescribe ni Gil Ramos, bakit i-issue ni Duterte yung command sa military to dismantle the COMELEC? I don't think he will do that.
Then,
Thank you.
then in that case, then let's go back to Section 1, Article 2 of the Constitution, that sovereignty reside in the people and all government authority. The president is government authority. And all government authority emanate from the people. So, ibig ko sabihin na kung ipapasok natin yan, although he is the president, but he only borrowed that authority from the people. If the people has to retake that authority from him, he has nothing to do with it.
Let
Okay,
me
Ben.
let me address you, Mr. Speaker. I want to recognize.
Yes,
to add
okay.
something.
You recognize, Professor Hill.
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Emmanuel Astillero. That citation of Ben, although it is within the citation of the 1987 Constitution, is actually an invocation of what is called the principle of constitutionalism. Constitutionalism, which is the recognition of the rule of law and the recognition of the fact that the supreme law is the welfare of the people. Salus populi est suprema lex. Cannot be supervened by any particular instantiation or drafting of a paper document. The principle of constitutionalism protects a people from having to suffer a situation where the Constitution, which is just their creation, becomes a tool for oppression of their rights, including their electoral rights, which is happening right now with the unintended effects of this paper constitution, the 1987 Constitution. And so when such a paper constitution is being used to oppress the people has the right to shred it and discard it. That is the higher principle of constitutionalism. Our forefathers in 1898 were the ones who introduced constitutionalism in Asia, the first ever to declare a republic under constitutionalist principles. They drafted a constitution that was a sovereign constitution because they were not controlled by any foreign power. They just won over the Spaniards. But then what they were expecting to have as allies, the Americans, started coveting the country. And so what happened was a war between the two nations, the young nation of the Philippines and the American power that was now crossing the Pacific. So we had a situation wherein our military was subdued. The principle of law, again, came in where law becomes silent in the face of arms. Our Constitution was silenced by American arms, but they created a puppet American Constitution, the 1935 Constitution. But this 1935 Constitution, headed by Recto, who was a young lawyer then, advised by 4 deputies who were formerly under the staff of General Aguinaldo, made sure that there was no abrogation of the 1899 Constitution. So the 1935 American puppet Constitution never abrogated the 1899 Constitution. So was it with the 1942 Laurel Constitution. And later on, Marcos put up a 73 Constitution, but it was a transmogrification of the 1971 constitutional draft of the 1971 Constitutional Assembly. So there were some political questions and legal questions about it. The 1987 Constitution is an American protectorate constitution because Cory would not have been able to declare a revolutionary government if Marcos was not abducted by the Americans into Hawaii. And again, this was proven in 1989 when Gringo and Enrile had a coup against the government, and they were able to control all Philippine military assets. But then the acting president, Dan Quayle, authorized overflights from Clark of American superior air forces, and it shut down, I think, our capability to resist them by shooting down one of the Filipino fighter pilots who faced them despite uneven odds. So this was the situation that we are in. And then going forward, in 2001, this 1987 Constitution, which was supposed to have been ratified by the Philippine Republic, by the Filipino people, has actually been broken when the coup against Arab was launched. In the 1987 Constitution ratified by the Filipino people, there are very explicit statements on how to replace a president, only by impeachment. A rogue Supreme Court under Hilario Davide created this doctrine of constructive resignation and has imposed it on our people, in the process destroying the 1987 Constitution. And you know, a constitution once broken cannot be put together again. The rogue Supreme Court, which rose above the Constitution that authorized it, was really subverting that process. Since that time, our Constitution has been honored, this 1987 part has been honored in the bridge rather than in the has been honored in the bridge rather than in the observance. So when you say that under the Constitution, Duterte is supposed to be the commander-in-chief, but the natural law is all of the people. The supreme law of the land, the supreme.
How tayag sila?
Ang tayo ka na dito?
Oh, parang
please,
Chinese Chinese communist sila. Inadop sila ni Tayag.
Audio.
Oo. Hindi, Tayag yung mga ninuno nyo. So, baka magkamag-anak pa kayo nito.
Ano yung pinag-usapan niyo yung data?
Please mute.
Ay, hindi, ito yung Congress na.
Congress na yan.
Oh, ito na yung virtual Congress. Som na lang. Nagdedebate
And
sila.
somebody mute, please.
Okay,
Please mute your audio.
I think I have muted Sonny Domingo because he was the one, I think, the source of the noise. So let me continue. I was saying that the 1987 Constitution has already been broken. We have only a patched up Constitution that is sustained by consensus among the powers controlling it. they are doing the things that are not in the Constitution, like the coup against Iraq and like the imposition of medical martial law right now. That is not in the Constitution. But the things that the Constitution is asking them to do, like Congress passing a political dynasty law, and like Congress also passing the executive implementing Articulo 12, where the president is actually told, compelled to take over public utilities to protect the people. It's not being done. So this constitution, as I was saying right now, is just a piece of paper from the point of view of the powers that occupy the power positions in the country. So now you say Duterte has to correct this. He has to correct this and go back to a constitutional order. It is like in a meeting like us, nagkagulo ng usapan, somebody rises and says, point of order, Mr. President, you have to do something. He doesn't do it, then somebody else under him with a political will to do it will do it. In a military command situation, there is that question that a subordinate asks his superior, his immediate superior, are you all right, sir? It means to say, he is addressing his superior and asking his superior whether he can still fulfill his command duties. If the answer is equivocated and not clear, he is usually ready already to capture and detain the superior officer and take over command. That is the situation now that you're asking Mr. President Duterte. Are you all right, sir? As Commander-in-Chief, are you all right, sir? Are you ready to fulfill the mandate of your office? Are you ready to protect the Filipino people? Because if you are not all right, sir, then something has to be done.
So, Mr. Emmanuel Astillero, are you satisfied with the explanation of Professor Hill?
Palagay ko, sasabihin ni Duterte, I'm all right. So, paano ba yun?
So now it depends on the military establishment. That is why our job is just to tell them, once they have critical mass to face the president. The president has offered the command to them twice in the past in his command conferences, but he has to stop doing that. Maybe he knows now that if he does it again, a military general might just take his bluff and take him on. Kaya hindi niya sinasabi yon. Wala nang sinasabi. Noon, 2 beses niyang inoffer sa chief of staff. Ready na ba kayo mag-take over? Sabi ng military, hindi pa sir, hindi namin alam pagpatakbo ng ekonomiya. But now, we have been in contact with most military people, peacefully telling them this is how you will do a takeover if you need to take over. This is how you
to
will
be
do it
recognized.
peacefully. So
Yeah,
that is the situation that
Attorney
I
Posadas.
explained to Attorney. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, a right to be recognized.
Okay, you are recognized, Attorney Posadas.
Okay, I have to apologize. I'm not ready for the video part of this session, but in response to Mr. Acilero's question, I would, let's put it this way, I would debate with President Duterte. And assuming that Mr. Acilero is President Duterte. So I would establish the line of discussion with President Duterte by starting, Mr. Acilero, please, if you have a piece of paper, just kindly put down 1899 Constitution as a first point, Mr. Acilero. And you have a very good question, and this gives us a chance to more or less establish a line of discussion on the constitutional, legal, and political process. Because after all, these are all processes, Mr. Rodriguez. So we start with 1899 Constitution, which represents the manifestation of the people's will back then, our forefathers. We belong to the same people, we belong to the same country. They're our forefathers. That represents the pure people's will. And the pure people's will is the most superior cause to form a constitution in order for a people to govern themselves orderly and peacefully. So start from the 89 Constitution. The 1899 Constitution represents the purest Filipino will, which is the most superior creator of a constitution. We're part of that people's will right now, even as we are only small voices, even a whisper. Nevertheless, we are part of voicing our people's will. Now, this people's will, in the form of that constitution, continues on. It's never been broken. And also, by the fact that our forefathers, Katipunan Army, pledged allegiance to it because it was already promulgated by President Aguinaldo. And President Aguinaldo back then represented as their commander-in-chief. So when Aguinaldo promulgated it, that's considered also already Pledge of Allegiance by the Katipunan Army. Yet that continues on. It's never been broken. Now, let's continue on from 1899. So remember, that is the pure people's will. That's the creation of pure people's will. There's never been broken. There's a continuity historically, constitutionally, legally, because a constitution is like a corporation. It has indefinite term unless it's been abolished or abolished or changed along the way. But okay, remember this: 1899 Constitution continues on unchanged. It's never been superseded. It's never been abolished by the following constitutions. The following constitutions do not even represent the pure people Filipino will. It's been tainted. It's been intervened. So it's not pure Filipino will for that matter. If only for that fact, it is an impaired constitution. It doesn't really represent the superior people's will of the Filipino people. So continue on. So along the line of succession, there's been presidents, armed forces chief of staff, and so on. It continues on. It's never been broken. So once it's pledged by the president of the Philippines and automatically pledged by the army, that pledge and allegiance continues on. It's never been broken, and that is our birthright and natural birthright in our blood, and it is our right to claim it. We have to claim it. Otherwise, what are we Filipinos for? Okay, you ask. I'm asking that question. What are we Filipinos for? The integrity of being a Filipino and our pure people's will is in that 1899 Constitution. We have to claim it as our birthright. Now, I will ask President Duterte, Mr. Duterte, do you have any issues with those statements that I meant? That it's a continuation of the pure people's will? What will he answer? If you were President Duterte, Mr. Archulero, what will you answer? Is that a continuation or?
May I answer that, President
Correct.
Duterte? Okay.
Huh? Yeah.
Since 1899,
You recognize.
there has been a succession of constitutions. Merong yung Constitution ni President Marcos. Merong Constitution 1987 ni Cory. And I think there's a constitution being used now.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I think what is being used now is yung 1987, if I'm not mistaken, no? 1987. Yes. Okay. Now, if we want to use 1899 again, we have to go to the Supreme Court, which is the branch of government that is the final arbiter on constitutional issues. We can discuss it here. Why not? We are free to discuss it here. But finally, this group must go to the Supreme Court and file an pleading, no? Na gamitin natin yung 1899 Constitution, still in force. Yun. And
Yeah.
then, let us see how the Supreme Court will rule. Ganun ang palagay ko dapat gawin. And
Okay.
when the Supreme Court rules positively for this group, o ayun,
Okay.
use it.
Yes. Okay. You're correct.
Robert, you have to be recognized first.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Attorney Posadas, you are recognized.
Right. Okay, Mr. Larry, you're correct. You're correct in a way. This is what we're leading to. The 1899 Constitution was never been abrogated by the following constitutions. It was never abrogated by the 1935 American Influence Constitution. Never been abrogated by the what follows that, and all the constitutions up to the present. The 1987 Constitution has never abrogated the 89 Constitution. There's never been a provision that the 1899 Constitution was already abolished. So it continues on. Since there is no abrogation, that Constitution 1899 is still alive. Now, this is where we are pointing. We're at this point. We are going now at this point. We are petitioning first the oath of office of President Duterte. Again, that's constitutional because we are citing the 1987 Constitution, which is what we're using now. That in that Constitution, the president's oath of office is to redress people's grievances. What we're doing now is grievances. We are asserting our grievances so that the Constitution is defective and it's no longer working and it's oppressing us. So it is our right to redress for to ask President Duterte to redress and follow his oath of office. That's all we're asking. Now, our resolution up to this point has been formed. We are now calling on President Duterte and the Armed Forces of the Philippines and or, yun ang ibig sabihin nun, and or, if President Duterte does not exercise his oath of office to listen to us, one or the other, whether he says no or yes. Okay? Pag sinabi ng yes, then he's following his oath of duty. Yun ang oath of duty niya eh. Pag sinabi niyang no, then he is in the dereliction of his duty, not even to listen, not even to consider. Ang ibig sabihin naman and or, now the armed forces now has the right because they already pledged allegiance to enforce that constitution, so they will have to enforce the constitution as it is now. Now, if ever there is a conflict between President Duterte and the armed forces of the Philippines, we can go to the Supreme Court. That is not out of the question. We can file a petition with the Supreme Court because it becomes a constitutional crisis. We go through the process. Now, if it so happens that a constitutional crisis, it cannot be resolved, then as protector of the people, the armed forces of the Philippines will have to take over. We have no choice. We have to push it. It is our birthright. Oh, di maliwanag si Duterte ayaw niyang itupad ang kanyang oath of office. So, ano sasabihin ng armed forces of the Philippines? You don't want to fulfill your oath of office to the people. That is your constitutional duty. So, sasabihin ng armed forces, we have no choice, Mr. President. Set aside, since you don't like it, then it's for the people, for us to protect the people and enforce this. The Supreme Court cannot intervene because there's nothing to file with them. There is only if there's something that's filed. For all you know, President Duterte may go to the Supreme Court and challenge the armed forces of the Philippines. Okay, bottom line is there's a constitutional conflict, but it must go on to replace the present system, which is so defective and so oppressive that people don't like to stay in that kind of form of government anymore. And here's one thing that we are doing now. What we're doing are all the effects of oppression and defective constitution. The defects of the 1935 and now the defects of 1987 constitution. These are all the effects. The only cause that we are talking about right now is a cause to change everything completely from down up, short of a social cultural overhaul. Oh, that's what we're trying to avoid because this can never change. In logic, again, I've already discussed it constitutionally and legally. But in logic, Mr. Celero, a substance has to be changed completely. Kasi in a substance has characteristics and features. You know, there's only one substance, but it has characteristics and features. Now, the 1987 government, its substance is so defective, it has so many defective effects that they remain as corruption and contamination. If you remain with the same system, the contamination remains, deep-rooted contaminations. Once you change the complete system, then at least this will give us a break on a new reset. Then it will be harder for corruption to come in. But all the corruptions that have happened already, that have been charged and will be charged, will have to follow its course of justice. So nobody will escape it. Once the system is completely changed, then so be it. If the armed forces has to take over, we have done it legally and everything that in our power and capacity to petition President Duterte, and bottom line, go to the Supreme Court. But it will happen.
Well, go to the Supreme Court, file a resolution to use
Yes.
the 1899 Constitution instead of the 1987.
Correct.
Only
We were
the
just
Supreme Court can rule on that, not the armed forces of the Philippines.
Okay.
no. That's the final
Attorney Posadas, you are
argument.
recognized.
Yes. Yeah, that's what we're saying. I didn't say that we're not going to the Supreme Court. We have to wait for an answer from Duterte and the armed forces themselves.
Point of order.
Yeah,
I'd like to,
point of order.
start the discussion because the earlier presentation I made talked about the Supreme Court becoming a rogue Supreme Court when it abolished, when it interjected and invented the constructive recognition doctrine. At that time, that Supreme Court has already created a defect, a flaw in the 1987 Constitution, which broke it and also broke its credibility. One point. Next point, the Supreme Court, sitting as SC Pet, has done dilatory tactics with impunity, not correcting the people's desire for a correction of electoral grievance by hearing the vice presidential protest for 5 years. That is again a dereliction of duty, which shows that they are part of the manipulative characteristics of the elite and they're controlled also by the oligarchy. Therefore, our group really are saying that we are now pledged to the 1899 Constitution. We're asking the military to join us because all these institutions under the 1987 Constitution have been abused, misused, and not used. So we are saying the Supreme Court is no longer the Supreme Court that must arbitrate about this because it has become a party to the crime of killing and abusing the 1987 Constitution. Its credibility is kaput. It cannot rule on another constitution. It becomes a political question. And the political question that we are, and the political demand that we are asking the army to do is to withdraw allegiance from the 1987 Constitution peacefully because of this misuse, abuse, and non-use of that Constitution. And now recognize 1899 Constitution.
If you're not going to the Supreme
You
Court,
must be recognized. I have the floor. I have the floor. I have the floor.
Mr. Astillero,
I have the floor. You are not yet recognized by the speaker. That's how we can avoid passionate and chaotic discussions. Okay, I yield to your question. I am taking the floor now again in my statement. So what is your question as an interpellation, Mr.
okay,
President?
Mr.
thank
Astillero,
you, thank you.
recognized.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. What you're saying is you will not use the Supreme Court as an avenue to use the 1899 Constitution instead of the 1987 because they are part of the system already and you cannot get justice from the present Supreme Court. So, gagamitin natin yung military. What you are suggesting is a coup d'etat.
No,
A military
No.
will take
No, no.
power.
no,
Yes, it is. Kasi you're
No.
going to use the military.
No.
Coup d'etat.
no.
Coup
We're
d'etat.
asking them
Professor
to
Hell, you
just
are recognized.
resume. We're asking them to just resume their allegiance as the Katipunan Army. The Philippine
Yeah.
Army is 124 years old. It comes from the Katipunan Army, which promulgated this 1899 Constitution. They were present in Malolos Barasawin Church when it was promulgated. We are correcting history, Mr. Astillero. We are,
May I?
and you see the illogicality of you saying we have to go to a Supreme Court that is pledged to defend the 1987 Constitution. How can they rule on another constitution? They cannot. It is a political question beyond their reach, beyond their jurisdiction, because they are sworn to defend the 1987 Constitution, this particular Supreme Court. That's why we cannot do that. It is an illogical move.
Okay.
Okay, may I,
Okay.
Mr. Ben?
Mr.
Okay.
Astillero, you are
Then
recognized.
if you're not going to use the Supreme Court because it will not rule in favor of the 1899 Constitution as you analyze it, you are going to use the armed forces to make the changes. And that's a coup d'etat. You're
Yeah.
actually saying na let us mount a coup d'etat. Let us not use the Supreme Court. Let us remove the president. Let us abolish Congress. And let us start with the new government. Yun ang sinasabi mo. Coup
Okay.
d'etat.
Mr. Astillero,
be
may
recognized.
I comment on your part? Ibig sabihin ni Professor Hill Ramos is the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, but it is under supervision of the Supreme Court. So, what he wants to explain directly is the military as protectorate of the people has to protect the will of the people directly. And let's go back to the 1899 Constitution.
Constitutionalism.
Correct. You're correct, Ben. You're correct.
Let me clarify.
But
Let me
it-
I'd like to be
clarify.
recognized.
Okay, Professor Hell, you are recognized.
Constitutionalism is above the 1987 Constitution. Constitutionalism, which is the rule proclaiming the will of the people, and the supreme law is the welfare of the people, is above the 1987 Constitution. Once a particular constitution is used to oppress the people, as what they are doing with the 1987 Constitution, then that constitution should be discarded, and the people have to demand from their protectors, their natural protectors, the military, which is the natural protectors of any group of people, with or without the constitution, even by common law. It's always the military that the people will go to for protection. They are now calling on the military under that natural process, that natural law. Let us not be controlled by particular constitutions which are inferior to the principle of constitutionalism. So that we are saying we do it peacefully. Now, if you call it a coup d'etat, it's up to you to call it a coup d'etat. We are saying
No.
we are asking the military to peacefully withdraw this recognition of the 1987 Constitution, which has been abused, misused, and not used. Therefore, we are saying, let's go, Mr. Military, you are our natural protectors. Protect us from the impending unintended effect of this 1987 Constitution, which will lead towards electoral rape of our electoral sovereignty this coming 2022. That is what we are asking, Mr. Speaker. That is what our group is asking. This Constitution
May I?
Mr.
Mr.
Astillero, just
Speaker,
a moment.
I yield.
Just a
questions.
moment.
Okay, I yield the questions, Mr. Speaker. I yield the
Okay.
floor.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker.
Okay, Ben.
Attorney Posada,
Mr. Presiding Officer, may I
Just a
answer
moment.
that?
just a moment. Attorney Posada has something to say.
Okay. Here's the perception of Mr. Astillero, and I cannot blame him. there's a difference between what we're doing. What we're doing is not rebellion. And when you talk about rebellion, when you're trying to incite sedition or rebellion, then it's all part of the military taking over. It's a coup d'etat. A coup d'etat is to change the leadership of the present government. It is not to change the constitution or the system. Yun ang coup d'etat. We're not asking coup d'etat. We're asking the military to enforce our valid, pure people's will constitution. They are not going to change President Duterte. That's a coup d'etat. It is not a coup d'etat. What we're doing is if President Duterte doesn't want to change the constitution and follow the people's will, which is our right. Remember, we are the superior people's will. He has to listen to us if we want to change the system or the constitution or the form of government. We're not changing him, nor the military in a coup d'etat changing him. If President Duterte says, I don't want to change the constitution, then the military has the right to take over because they pledged allegiance to that constitution already. So we're not rebelling. We're not changing President Duterte. Once the system is changed, he can go on as the prime minister until elections are held. So there's a difference. It's not a rebellion. Now, when it comes to a point that President Duterte challenges the armed forces of the Philippines, then we will file a petition with the Supreme Court. And we're not saying that we're not going to use the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court will, if there's a constitutional crisis between the people, the army, and the other branches of government, and President Duterte himself, will have to be adjudicated in the Supreme Court. That's very orderly. So it is not coup d'etat. It is not, because it's rebellion. Because it's rebellion, it's not a coup d'etat. Coup d'etat is changing a person. What we're doing is petitioning. It's our right to petition as our sovereign people's will. We are the superior creator of the Constitution. We want to change the Constitution. We're not asking to change President Duterte as a person, as a president. We're saying that President Duterte, it is our people's will. We are the superior people's will. We are the creator of the Constitution. We want to change the Constitution. Correct? So it's not rebellion. It's not coup d'etat.
May I take the floor, Mr. Ben? answer
you
the
are recognized, Mr. Telyero.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sige. Huwag natin tawagin coup d'etat, which you define as changing leadership. Ang definition kasi ng coup d'etat, you change the government. And the government consists of the three branches, even Congress. Pero sige, I'll take your definition. Hindi coup d'etat. Also, I'd like to correct that there is a bloody coup d'etat and there is a peaceful coup d'etat. Ngayon, if the army makes a peaceful coup d'etat, wala namang problema, walang mamatay, no? So, bababa na lang si Duterte, yung Congress, titigil, etc. And then, we'll have a change of government using the 1989 Constitution. Ngayon, I do not see the difference between a peaceful coup d'etat and a resolution to be filed with the Supreme Court now requesting that the 1889 Constitution be used instead of the 1987. That is the peaceful way of doing it. Ngayon, if our group feels na the Supreme Court rules against us, sige, so we go to the military and say, let's have a peaceful coup d'etat. Yun, ganun lang.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to be recognized.
You are recognized, Attorney Posadas.
Okay.
Let us recognize Geoffrey Balse. You wanted to talk for a long
The
time.
essence of a
Can you
coup
yield that floor
d'etat.
to Balse? Robert,
Yeah.
can you yield it? Can you yield the floor to Geoffrey Balse?
Yeah,
Okay.
if your privacy is here, then you are recognized. Mr. Balse, you are recognized.
Yes, thank you very much.
Naku,
Mr. Speaker and Mr. Chairman,
Point ito, si Bagyo.
I think we have to
Sinakatihan yan.
carefully,
Australia.
if I may ask the background to mute, others to mute. If we'll have to take a careful attention to the sequence of events that we want to happen, because as what's happening right now, we are being we may be misconstrued as fostering or encouraging a coup, which is tantamount to sedition, rebellion, and all those charges. We must establish that we are taking a very legitimate path. And the legitimate path, our basis of legitimacy is really, as Attorney Posadas pointed out, a constitution that has not been abrogated and the sovereignty that was not ceded, that was never ceded. We also have armed forces that were founded based on its spirit during the revolution, and even that has not been ceded, has not been abrogated. So the armed forces of the Philippines does contain the spirit, the very spirit of that 1899 constitution that was never ceded and never abrogated. And then, so we give a very reasonable option to the president who will be asked, "Are you all right, sir?" And if he says, "Yes, I'm all right," and then they can engage into the discussion of what he means by all right. Is he all right to defend the will of the people? How? And the military can then present to him a better alternative with all due respect and all due reason. And if he does choose that path of greatest reason, then he can work to obtain the legitimacy from the 1987 Constitution itself, which says if you can get don't know how many millions of signatures, then you can initiate the change. And if he does, and if we do get then that would give us not just the legal basis, but the political leverage as well. So we can thus proceed to the Supreme Court to recognize the legitimacy of the shift back to the 1899 Constitution. I think we have to manage that we have to carefully manage that sequence of events. Thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Geoffrey Balse. And I think in addition to what you say, if the 12% of the total registered voters and 3% of the regional voters agree that the constitution must be changed, so I think nobody could oppose to it, because that is also mentioned in 1987 Constitution. And if the people needs to change the Constitution by going back to the 1899 Constitution, so I think there is no such question for that. If the 12% of the total registered voters plus 3% of the regional voters agree to it. Attorney Posadas, can you say something about it? Attorney Posadas, are you there? Okay, Professor Hill.
Well, Robert Posadas is muted, so he might be talking, but we cannot hear him. So I'm asking him to unmute because he wanted to talk earlier.
Yes.
He's not responding right now.
Okay. Yeah,
okay.
okay.
Attorney Posadas, you are recognized.
Sige, Mr. Rosilero. So, yun na nga, we are not saying that we will not go to the Supreme Court first, because people's will is also the creator of the Supreme Court as part of the Constitution. Ang people's will, especially our pure people's will under the 1899 Constitution, must be revived in order for history to complete itself. We don't like the same history as we have now to repeat itself, because insanity. There will be the same process in the cheating in the elections, corruption of the oligarchy. We will be oppressed. There will be, just like what's happening now, there is chaos, even in considering the fact that even right now, if I may say so, I'm claiming right now that President Duterte is no longer authorized to supervise the other branches of government, nor the LGUs or the barangays, because his national emergency declaration has already expired. In the Constitution, see, we're following the Constitution. We're still citing and invoking the Constitution. The President may declare a national emergency law cumulatively effective only for 6 months. Before 6 months is over, he has to go and report to Congress to ask for an extension. He has never done that. He's already overextended his authority, so he's no longer authorized now. So, Government Gwen Garcia, for example, has the right to question his authority, because after all, his protocol is very effective. But he's only being overridden, just like anybody else in the Philippines. They don't listen anymore to anybody. They just follow what they want at the cost of suffering of the people. And the people at such a point in time now are more fearful of the government than the virus itself. It doesn't make sense. Everything is data driven with no result. It's the same result. They just keep adding and changing. So that in itself is already a violation of the Constitution. Be that as it may, what we're doing is asking President Duterte, because it is our right to ask him under his oath of office to redress, to listen to us as our people's will. We are superior creator of the Constitution. We are asking the agent of that Constitution to follow his duty to listen to us. We don't go to the Supreme Court first, because it's part of the constitutional process to utilize that oath of office for the people to ask President Duterte to redress their grievances. That's all we're asking. So a petition and asking President Duterte, Mr. President Duterte, would it be better if we change the system, because everything is all chaotic and history will repeat itself and the people are continuing to be oppressed, corruptions going deep-rooted and entrenched corruption going on? They cannot change. So remember what I said logically, you have to change the system or the substance in order to uh, uproot all the entrenched corruption. If you don't change the system, contamination like the virus remain. If you don't eliminate the virus, this is the substance of the government system, the contamination will remain. So change the system completely, and that is our right to ask under the Constitution for the president to change the system. If he doesn't want to change the system, there is the enforcement part of the government for the military to not take over, but to completely follow the 1899 Constitution, because that is now our considered valid and alive Constitution. Now, if there's a conflict, then we go to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court remains. It will not be abolished. They will remain as they are according to their terms. But what will be abolished immediately will be the Department of Health and their implementation, and the COMELEC and the Smartmatic. Those are definitely will be changed right away, because they are all the entrenched corruption uh, um, underground themselves. They have to uproot them by completely changing the system. If you don't change the system, they remain infected, and then it will repeat itself. So this is our chance now, and it is our birthright. Especially, we're not asking for another constitution, not just any other constitution, but it's our birthright. It is our ancestors, forged by our ancestors, forefathers, blood, sweat, and tears. It is our birthright. We're only claiming that birthright. We're asking President Duterte to say, Mr. Duterte, please exercise your oath of office to listen to us. And then President Duterte will say, okay, I'm listening to you. What do you want? Oh, Oh, well, when the President Duterte says, okay, what I need to do is to order a plebiscite. Ayan. He will say, okay, since you are petitioning it, let's do this formally and in process. I will order a referendum or a plebiscite. He will now order a referendum, even presently, probably through the COMELEC or through the barangays, but preferably through the barangays because COMELEC is infected, contaminated. Then people will have to vote. What according to the prerequisites of a plebiscite or a referendum, if it says it requires according to the Constitution that how many portion of the how many percentage of the population is required for a resolution or a plebiscite to be approved. When it's approved, President Duterte has no choice. He has to follow that referendum result. Correct?
Okay, Mr. Esteleros, you are recognized. Please unmute. Please unmute your audio.
I think we are forgetting that Congress
Big.
has a part in this. Kasi we are concentrating on President Duterte to do the constitutional changes. Actually, it's the Congress who must initiate constitutional changes or adopt a new constitution. Hindi si Duterte. Si Duterte implements the policy. Ang kanyang policy na magagawa, yung policy ng executive. But if we're talking about the Constitution, I think we should go to Congress. Yun ang alam ko, no? And then if there is a conflict between Congress and the executive, the Supreme Court arbitrates. Kaya kailangan dito sa usapang ito, ipasok nyo ang Congress. Yun lang. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ramilo Gold 8, any comment? Because yesterday, Attorney Aaron with your group is talking about Constitution. Mr. Milo Gold 8, can you unmute your audio? Okay, he's not. Anybody wants to say something?
May I, please, Mr.
Okay,
Speaker?
okay, go ahead, Mr. Balsi.
All right. Here is the dilemma if we approach the Congress. The Congress has been elected using dubious electoral processes. Therefore, they would be in a conflict of interest between reforming the electoral process and upholding the Constitution, or thinking of what is good for the people. We would call that principal agent risk. How do we know that their decision will be for the good, for what they have in mind is for the good of the people and not for their own good? And because we bear that principal agent risk of authority, our moral hazard increases that they will take riskier moves that may be contrary to the people, because the people are not exactly in general aware of what is happening, aware of the defects of the electoral process that we just discussed. So that is essential. That is the dilemma we would be in if we approach Congress. Whereas, let's acknowledge, yes, that the role of the executive, the role of the president is to execute the policies made by Congress. But above that, he has sworn an allegiance to the people first, to the Constitution second. And if he is consistent with those at least first two priorities he's made in his oath of office, then he has he has every right to exercise the due process to initiate the shift from the 1987 Constitution to the 1899 Constitution, and as Dr. Posadas suggested, and which I support, conduct a plebiscite immediately, as soon as possible. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
May I be recognized?
Then anybody has to say something?
May I be
Yes,
recognized?
you are recognized, Professor Hale. Yeah, you are recognized.
Okay. I'm aware of, I think, the congruence of the statements of Mr. Balse and Mr. Astillero. I think the point of convergence is the desire for a peaceful process of changing the government or changing the leadership of the country. My comment on the statements of Mr. Astillero is that he was proceeding from the presumption of regularity in the elections of the people who are in power now. But I have pointed out in the presentation I just made in my point of privilege that this has not been so for the past several elections. Our elections have always been manipulated by a syndicate that frustrates the will of the people. It is not totally frustrated because some local people win and Duterte won in 2016 not because of the regularity of processes, but they were because of the fact that the cheating process failed in the case of Duterte. So they were not able to pad the votes to destroy his mandate or his election. The other thing also that's important to note is that I alluded to the fact that the top position in 2019 was bought by the Villar's from the COMELEC syndicates. The actual, believe it or not, the actual top notcher of 2019 was Bongo, followed by Bato de la Rosa. Cynthia Villar was just number 3. This was based on surveys I was running because I own a survey firm there, Survey ng Bayan, and that was the findings I had. And then, when a Senate ranking is manipulated, that impacts potential presidential choices or Senate president choices. This intervention of the COMELEC happened also in the ranking of Drilon in 2016. The actual top notcher there is Joel Villanueva. He was not the top notcher, but he manipulated it in the course of cheating Bongbong Marcos. He also made sure that he got the top positions and that Laila De Lima gets in also as a senator. Now, these situations that I am talking about is also applicable to the 2010 elections when the actual senator top notcher was Loren Legarda, but the COMELEC Smartmatic, maybe because they were so guilty of cheating Fernando Po, made sure that it was Grace Po that became top notcher. But I think it was because they were responding to the order of the late President Noynoy Aquino. You can make anybody top notcher as long as it is not Loren Legarda. I think they feared a presidential run of Loren Legarda. So she was frustrated from becoming top notcher. So these manipulations that I was talking about impeaches the presumption of regularity that Mr. Arteriero attributes to the roles of our institutions in our present, under the present 1987 Constitution. Be that as it may, after having said that, it is still important to find the peaceful process that can be followed to transition from the present situation into a governance under the 1899 Constitution. And I'm conscious of what Mr. Balse has mentioned, that we have to be very careful in the staging of these events and the staging of our efforts and public positions so that we will not be misconstrued as the way we were understood by Mr. Arteriero, that we are promoting a coup d'etat and we will not stop and we will even go into a process of a violent coup d'etat. If there is a way to do it peacefully, we will do it peacefully. And that is why we are calling on the armed forces to peacefully withdraw allegiance from this abused, misused, and not used 1987 Constitution and revive the original allegiance of our Katipunan Army to the 1899 Constitution. And then from there, reset the country and correct the political misfortune that we have been going through for several decades now. So what I'm trying to say is even if we consider the 1987 Constitution a de facto constitution and not the legal constitution of the country, since it is in force in effect, there's such a thing as recognizing it de facto, even in international law. And at the moment, since we are dedicated to a peaceful process, we have to use the existing processes available in this de facto constitution to transition towards an 1899 constitution. But we should not lose sight of the actual goal that this actual constitution is already defective, not only from its nature from the start, but also from the way it has been mishandled, abused, and mutilated by the existing powers that be. Be that as it may, I recognize the points of Mr. Balse and Mr. Astillero, but I think the common point there is we want to have a peaceful path towards change in the country. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Milo Gold 8, can you unmute and say something? Because yesterday Attorney Aaron is discussing the Constitution, and I guess you are with him as well. So can you please unmute and you are recognized, Mr. Milo Gold 8. So he is not responding, and
May I?
Mr. Sunny Domingo.
May I?
Just a moment. Just a moment. Mr. Sandy Domingo, can you hear me? Can you please unmute your audio? Okay, Mr. Astillero, you are recognized.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben. What Gil Ramos is saying is that we cannot use the Congress, which I am proposing, because their election is under question. No? Because the Comelec manipulated their election set. So be it. And therefore, the only alternative is to use the armed forces. Is correct. In a peaceful way. And he says it can be done by withdrawing allegiance to the president, who is their commander-in-chief. But then, the next step is to set a constitutional process going. Kasi hindi naman pwede mag-adapt ng constitution na bagong constitution, 1899 ang armed forces. Because wala naman silang kapangyarihan to adopt a constitution, di ba? So, you go back to Congress, who is authorized to adopt constitutional changes. And for the Supreme Court to rule that it is so, the armed forces may be a force to initiate changes. Tama si Hill. Pero after the armed forces steps in and says, oh, sige, let's have these changes, you go back to Congress. And yung mga objection ninyo about the election of the Congress people, you have to accept that. No? Wala na ibang Congress. Unless you do a new congressional election. Ay madugo yun, no? That's another alternative. The armed forces can say, oh, sige, let's have a new congressional election para we can have the constitutional changes. Madugo yun, saka matagal yun. I don't know whether this group can sustain that. Thank you very much.
Mr. Astillero, I would like to add to what you had said. At remember that it was also been introduced to Congress about the changing of the Constitution, but until now they haven't reached the proper decision. Now, as far as what you say that the military and etc. is concerned, going to COMELEC, what the group is intending into is the military has to uh, uh, what you call this, has to go with the people, then ask the commission and audit to audit the COMELEC, and after that, if the COMELEC is already in proper and in order, that's the time that we have to conduct election. So I think that is very clear. It was explained by Professor Hill Ramos that we should not waste what we intend into, but the main purpose and objective of this group has to be focused. Professor Hill, can you say something?
May I, Ben?
Okay,
May
okay.
I?
Mr. Astelier,
Kasi once we, our group, initiates a change in governance by adopting the 1899 Constitution, you've got to follow through by governance. Now, governance is done by a political party. Now, let me share you the experience of Indonesia. In 1965, there was a revolution in Indonesia and 1 million people died, both sides, no? Left and right. Nando si Sukarno, nando si Suharto. Ang nanalo, si Sukarno. And Sukarno had a political party composed mainly of the military. So, kaya natanda ko yun, no? Yung partido ni Sukarno ay military. And after natalo niya si Sukarno, yung political party niya took over the government and did all the necessary things to legitimize itself. And they ruled for decades, I think, until the daughter of Sukarno won the elections. So nawala na sila. Pero ang leksyon ng Indonesia, nagkaroon ng revolution, maraming namatay, but we will not go into that. Di tayo magkaka-revolution para walang namatay. But there is a successor political party who must handle the reins of government. Hindi pwedeng pabayaan ganun lang. Yun ang sinasabi ko rito. So, kung makukumbisi natin ng military to be with us and do the changes, they must be part of our political party. At tayo, we must have a political party ready to assume governance. So, thank you very much.
Okay, so masagot ko yan that iba rin ang konstitusyon ng Indonesia kaysa konstitusyon natin. In our case, based on 1987 Constitution, sovereignty reside in the people, and all government officials power emanate from the people. So what we are pushing right now is to ask Duterte to be with our principle of adopting the 1899 Constitution. Now, if ever he does not want, so that's the time that we have to ask the option of the military in order to protect the people by the abuse of Constitution of 1987 Constitution by the sitting government at present.
Oo nga, ang point ko, that's good, that's correct, no? What we are saying is we want these changes, constitutional changes actually, because we represent the people. You see? But do we? Okay, that's put that aside. Let us assume that they will believe we represent the people. Although I would believe Geoffrey Balse better na you go through a signature campaign, etc., and get 1 million signatures to really say that we represent the people. But that's beside the point. Ang akin lang, the use of the military to effect changes is good. It's reasonable, basta peacefully, walang mamatay. But after the change is done, there must be a governing party, political party yun. If you do not think ahead of the governance part after the change in constitution, hilaw, mahihilaw tayo. So, I suggest that this group starts thinking, well, what happens if the constitution is changed from 1987 to 1899? Oh, magkakaroon ba ng election? Eh, sino ba ang partido natin? Tapos, kailangan yung army kasama natin, di ba? O, yun lang.
Professor Hill?
Yes, that is a point well taken. And I can assure you, Mr. Estrellero, that the points you have raised are already being attended to. There is a political party that is organized. There are many things that are being organized. There are linkages being organized to different groups, and that exists. And we have organized a parliament of the web and a shadow government on the web to be able to monitor existing governance and to be able to replace policies with actual prescriptions for change. Because this thing is not just something that happened here. What you're seeing now as a shadow Congress being convened, which is a small group discussing this 1899 movement, has actually been in the organizational stages since the advent of Duterte's presidency in 2016. So we are already about 3 to 4 years into the process of doing these things. And there are many groups already being mobilized, not only to criticize but also to prescribe. And there are many groups that have experience in government who are also with us. And so I would invite you to join formally the Parliament of the Web, this Shadow Congress. We have a Facebook page. We have a YouTube page. We have also different pages in Facebook and chat groups in Facebook. And so it is active, and it is in a process of building research and documentation. And it's in a process of sharing data through Google Drive, shared drives, and that is being done. Your suggestions are well taken, and that is being done. But Ben, Sunny Domingo wanted to talk, but please recognize him. He wants to present something as a point of privilege.
Okay, Sunny Domingo is recognized. Kasani, can you please unmute your video? Mr. Sunny Domingo, you are recognized. Please unmute your audio.
Maybe he's not listening right now, so you just open the floor to anybody else who would like.
Anybody in this group who can say something? Melo, Gold 8? Melo, Gold
Yes.
8?
Like,
Jingle.
Okay, Attorney Posadas, you are recognized.
Yes, the 1 million like campaign, if you may call it that way, should be part of the referendum process, because the referendum process constitutionally, legally requires a certain number of majority that will carry through. So if you say is your campaign for a 1 million likes or comments favoring the change of government, that will not be effective and legal and constitutional. So it should be part of the plebiscite order or referendum order. So it's not a popularity vote to change the system. It should be according to the requisites of a plebiscite and a referendum that has the lawful power to let President Duterte implement it. Otherwise, if it's just a mere votation or liking, collecting opinions for 1 million likes, it's not going to be the effective and legal and constitutional process. That's all I can say. So, but nevertheless, be assured that everything, if it comes to a point where there is a constitutional crisis, we will go to the Supreme Court. But we will never to go to Congress, because Congress is part of the problem. They're part of the present system. How can you tell them to say, hey, we want this? And they will say, how can we possibly do that? You want us to change ourselves? They cannot abolish themselves. So they're not part of the process.
Okay, so Mr. Sunny Domingo, can you hear me? Milo 8, Milo Gold 8, Felma Responte, Jingle. Can anybody say something?
I can
Okay, you are recognized, Professor.
make a point of clarification.
Hello, yeah, can you hear me?
Now,
Yeah,
Sunny
okay.
Domingo now
Sunny
wants to
Domingo is
talk.
now recognized.
Hello?
Yes, you are recognized. Mr. Domingo, you are
Can you
recognized.
hear me now?
Yes, yes. Yeah, loud and clear.
Yeah,
Go
can you
ahead.
hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I think the discussion is going around. Maybe we should discuss some strategies. And I agree to the last comment that we should go to the constitutional process. Pwede bang mag-Tagalog? Kailangan bang English pala?
Okay,
Dito?
pwede.
Pwede.
Tagalog,
Pwede ba
English is acceptable.
na i-assume na natin sa tagal-tagal ng panahon, ayaw gawin ni Duterte. At ang military, hindi rin gagalaw kung hindi gagalaw si President Duterte. Dahil baka nga nagpalit na rin ang ihip ng hangin, may pakinabang sila sa status quo. And then itong movement natin to change the Constitution, para bang baka ang tingin nila, mag-change ng Constitution, pero kung si Duterte ang magmando ng palit ng Constitution, ibig sabihin wala rin palit ang gobyerno. Nandyan pa rin yung mga problema na sinasabi ni Hill. Unang-una, nandyan pa rin ang COMELEC or whatever. So if I may suggest, can we open the discussion towards strategizing how to do a plebiscite? Like for example, di pitikin na natin yung present constitution na palitan ng pangalan ng Pilipinas. O hindi, mag-open na tayo, mag-open up na tayo ng discussion para dadami ang sasali sa atin ang movement na palitan ng pangalan sa Pilipinas, palitan na rin ang constitution. Balik doon sa 1899. So whichever comes out, I think we can get more people to participate on expanding our objective to changing the constitution, to first changing the name. Kasi ang pangalan natin pinakamabaho sa buong mundo. Pag nasa Amerika ka, ang tabi nila flips, ano ba sa flips? Pinagbabaliktad tayo. Nasa Europe ka, Pinay, made tayo. Nasa Japan ka, Japayuki tayo. Anong klaseng pangalan yung Pilipinas? Unang-una, tayo na lang hindi palit ng pangalan. Lahat ng mga bansa katabi natin, yung Siam, naging Thailand. Example lang yun. And then also, to join the discussion, I don't think we can follow the model of Indonesia and follow the model of Myanmar. Tingnan nyo, nagkaroon ng parliament, pero nandyan kadamihan ng military sa
Nawala ka. Mr. Sunny Domingo, nawala ka.
Sa tingin ko, referendum to change the name will open the minds of the people to study the difference between the old constitution and the new constitution. So, yan lang po ang akin. Thank you.
Maganda rin na suggestion niya na if we have to conduct a referendum, isabayan na natin ito ang pagpalit ng pangalan. 1899 Constitution and changing the Philippines to Marlica. Yan. Mr. Milo Goldate, can you say something about the Constitution? Dahil nung isang araw, Constitution ang pinag-uusapan ninyo. Milo Goldate, can you unmute your audio? Or anybody?
Ben, may I say something?
Okay, Mr. Astillero, you are recognized.
Ang strategy na isinasuggest ni ng last speakers ay
Mr. Domingo.
referendum. Ang ibig sabihin ng referendum, merong aaprubahan ng mga tao. So, ang strategy ba natin, iharap natin yung 1899 Constitution at yung pagpapalit ng pangalan for referendum. Yung bang 1899 Constitution, maligaya na ba tayo doon? Nabasa na ba natin mabuti yun? Kasi pagka nagka-referendum at inaprubahan yung 1899, yun na ang Constitution natin. And we'll have to use that, no? Sa ngayon, ang ginagamit natin, 1987. So, I just want to clarify that. Ano ba, maligaya na ba tayo sa 1899 Constitution? Well, yung pagpapalit ng pangalan, in favor ako doon, Maharlika, okay lang. Pero yung referendum will approve a new constitution, yung 1899. Napag-aralan na ba natin yun? Yun ang tanong ko. Thank you.
Sa mga nakarinig, ito lang akin masabi na ang 1899 Constitution is composed of 101 article. So siguro, pwede niyo i-google yan at alamin kung ano ang nilalaman ng 1899 Constitution in contrast to 1987 Constitution, which are now being abused by the sitting government officials. Okay, Mr. Sunny Domingo, can you add something for that? Anybody could say something?
Hello,
Yes.
okay.
You're
Narinig ko
recognized.
niyo ako?
Okay,
Okay,
marinig.
may suggestion ako na magandang pangalan. Kasi bago si Magellan at bago si MacArthur, we were a free country. In fact, we were an archipelago with several tribes. Each island was free among itself. And there was no way we can have a civil war because we had to cross the ocean. So, ang maganda lang na nangyari, parang pinag-isa tayo except yung Muslim area. Ngayon, balikan natin, dapat, ano ba tayo talaga noon? We were trading with the Chinese as a free country. So, ano sa Tagalog ang free country? Ang free country sa Tagalog ay malayang bansa o malayang nasyon. May mga nagsasabi na Maharlika, identified kay Marcos yan, baka mahirapan tayo. Pero yung Republika ng Malaya, sinong mag-aayon na matawagan na ikaw ay Malaya? Ikaw ay Malayan. Ikaw, you are a free citizen of the world. Kung gusto niyo ng world citizenship na tayo dahil we are everywhere, including Alaska. So, palagay ko, palitan natin ang strategy natin to have an open discussion instead of trying to move the country to have a referendum to change the name by whatever constitution we can use. Then, if you follow the strategy of war, we try to find ourselves in the high ground, have a good tie-up with several coalition with several leading parties to now move the military to declare that the constitution that they would like to follow is the Malolos Constitution instead of the EDSA Constitution or the US Constitution. or the Marcos Constitution. Eh, lagyan na ho natin ng pangalan mga yan. Yung Constitution natin ngayon, EDSA. Galing tayo kay Marcos. Pagkatapos, galing tayo sa Amerika. Eh, balik tayo sa Pilipino. Yan lang po akin.
Okay, Jingle, can you hear me? Can you say something? Jingle.
Yes, good
Jingle,
morning po sa lahat.
you are recognized.
Thank you, Sir Ben. Good morning sa lahat din. May tatanong lang ako. Tagalog, Taglish na lang ako. If we do at the same time yung tawag yun, yung transition of 1887 to 1899 at the same time changing of our country's name, pwede ba yun? Hindi ba yung masyadong conflict or masyadong maraming proseso? Kasi we have to take which problem first, then before we, siguro naman yung mga changing of name naman is pwede naman to follow naman yan. As long as ang first solution munang gawin natin is yung sagot doon sa main problem natin ngayon na which is very super kumunoy na yung bansa natin. So siguro we have to take the major solution muna doon sa main problem natin. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. I
Okay.
think I want to recognize.
Nabanggit lang kanina yung Maharlika. Yeah. Professor Ramos, we are recognized.
That's good. The suggestion of Jingle is good. Focus on the main problem. Because if we try to carry a lot of baggage in our fight, baka mas marami tayong resistance na masalubong. At saka baka ma-divert tayo from the direction of the main blow, ika nga, yung talagang main focus natin. As in my point of privilege, I have defined the main problem as oligarchic control of the country, elitist control of the country, wherein they have controlled even the process of selecting our leaders in an oligarchic loop that I have presented to you carefully. And I have also shown the levers of power that they're using in the COMELEC because of the COMELEC cheating syndicates. That is the unintended effect of creating a constitutional commission independent of anybody. So we have a situation wherein the COMELEC conducts the elections, and if we have questions about the elections, the COMELEC also investigates our questions about the elections. Bantay sa lakay. A situation that is inbred, which is not correct. Other best practices is that elections are conducted by ordinary institutions, and if some infraction happens because of some illegalities or violations, they are not immune from prosecution and they can be jailed anytime. That's the situation in the United States. That's the situation in the United Kingdom. These countries do not have a constitutional COMELEC. I think only India has a constitutional COMELEC like ours. But even then, because of the parliamentary structure of India, they are not immune from prosecution. So they can be prosecuted at the state level because they conduct elections by state. So what I'm trying to say is this. Ang kalaban natin ngayon ay ang oligarchy control ng ating bansa. Kaya tayo nagpo-propose ng pag-adapt ng 1899 Constitution kasi isa yun sa mapayapang paraan para masupil itong mga oligarkong ito. Para mahinto ang kanilang control ng COMELEC kasi ma-abolish ang COMELEC. Mahihinto yung mga political dynasties na naglipana dyan sa ating Kongreso at sa Senado dahil sa mahihinto yung Senado yan. Mahihinto yung mga legislative groups na yan na makontrol ng mga political dynasties. At saka yung sinasabi tinasabi kanina, mabigyan ko ng pansin yung sinabi kanina ni Mr. Astillero, kung napag-aralan na ba natin ang Constitution? Napag-aralan natin yan, marami nag-aral niyan, hindi lahat siguro. At saka ang sinasabi natin, we are using that as a reset button. Hindi porke ina-adapt natin yung 1899 Constitution na yung kung anong nandoon yung susundin natin. Pagsabay sa pag-adapt niyan ay kasama na ang retrofitting process. Ngayon pa lang, meron tayong Committee on Amendments na sinasabi ba natin, i-retrofit ba natin, gagamitin ba natin yung mga suhestyon ng Bayanihan Constitution, gagamitin ba natin yung mga ibang mga magagandang panukala sa 1987 Constitution na hindi naman ginawa, na binaliktad lang ng mga taong nakaupo later. Halimbawa, yung political dynasty provision ng Bayanihan Constitution, pwede natin i-adopt yun sa 1899 Constitution as an amendment. Ang 1776 Constitution o 1789 Constitution ng United States, kasi sila ay naging independyente noong 1776, July 4. Pero yung kanilang Constitution na-ratify lang ng 13 states nila noong 1789. Yung kanilang 1789 Constitution na yan ay nagkaroon na ngayon ng mga 32 susog, 32 amendments. 27 amendments of this have already been ratified by all the 50 states of the United States. And also, that is also the pattern that we can adapt and do for the 1899 Constitution. We can retrofit it and make it a modern constitution for our immediate use. Hindi tayo bumabalik sa past. We are using the past to build the future. And we're using the past just to create a legal interregnum so that a peaceful way can be used to bring about revolutionary change. Yun lang. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
Clarification lang ito, nabanggit ko kanina itong Maharlika dahil nabanggit ang referendum. Kaya ang point ko doon na to reduce more expenses in the referendum is a buy. Pero I am not really posing the changing of names. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Aceliero, you are
Mr.
recognized.
Speaker.
Okay, yung palang 1899 Constitution ay hindi i-adapt per se as written. Marami tayong ilalagay pa ron. Ang suggestion ko, why don't we call a constitutional convention to draft the modern version of the 1899 Constitution na gusto nating ibigay for a referendum. Kailangan may constitutional convention tayo para ma-plansya na yung mga provisions ng 1899 Constitution. Lalagay pa yung mga provision yata ng American Constitution. O tama yun. At ilalagay pa rin yung mga iba. O yun. Magkaroon muna ng constitutional convention. Pwede naman online yun eh. Para lang madraft yung ire-referendum. Kasi medyo careful ako sa referendum. Kasi pagka iniharap mo rin yung isang bagay at in-approve yun, yun na. So magka-constitutional convention muna tayo. Yun ang suggestion ko. Thank you.
Recognize, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, so Mr. Hale Ramos, Professor Hale, you are recognized.
Those things can be done within the 1899 Constitution. We can already call an elections for a convention in the 1899 Constitution. Immediately upon, this is how the transition will happen so that people can understand. I want one path to transition. Once the military says we are now under the 1899 Constitution, immediately the Supreme Court will be asked, are you pledging allegiance to the 1899 Constitution? Supreme Court members who will pledge allegiance will not continue in the Supreme Court for life. But they are now pledged to the 1899 Constitution. Members of Congress who are now there, senators, will tell the senators, Mr. Senator, there is no Senate in the 1899 Constitution. But if you pledge allegiance to the 1899 Constitution, you will continue as a legislator under the Constitution. You're at once a member of Parliament. Okay, so there is no constitutional COMELEC. This will also be done for the members of Congress. Members sila kaagad ng Parliament. Now, yung mga executive departments, everything will remain in place kasi merong Les Miserables or adaptability clause, section 24 of the 1899 Constitution, which were in the existing structures of municipal law, meaning kasi municipal law, domestic law that is followed by the country within its boundaries, will remain in place until change. So walang pagbabago. Pag shift natin sa 1899 Constitution, ang immediate lang na matatanggal ay ang COMELEC kasi wala namang COMELEC. The 2022 elections can proceed as is. Pagkatapos itong mga adjustment na to, at doon sa 2022 elections, yan ay supervised na ngayon ng military at saka ng Supreme Court. Wala na yung COMELEC eh. So a certain provision will be made, whatever it is. One of them can be a joint supervising committee of the Supreme Court and a COMELEC and the military to supervise the elections. So itong mga prosesong pagbabago, the retrofitting process can already happen. Ang nangyayari, we are resetting back to our will, to our free sovereign will of 1899 and proceeding from there to put in the necessary changes on a more permanent basis. And this can be done by the existing Congress. The way the US Congress does it, they create a subject-by-subject amendment, and each amendment is subject to ratification in plebiscite para hindi ma-confuse ang tao. Walang shotgun approval. Isa-isa. Kaya sila ngayon mayroong 32 amendments na propose, 27 pa lang ang na-adopt ng lahat ng states ng United States. That is what can happen to us. But ang proseso is that we start here kasi kung hindi, saan tayo magsisimula? There must be a point of origin. And that is the way we can do this. This is just my suggestions in terms of transition recommendations.
Just a moment. Professor Hill still explaining.
Yes, so what I'm saying is that these things that I am suggesting are just one of the suggestions. Right now, the purpose of this group is also to analyze and discuss those transition strategies to make sure the primordial concern is that we do this in the most peaceful manner para hindi tayo magkaroon ng violenting proseso. And that is what we want to do. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Sunny Domingo, you are recognized.
Thank you. I agree to Professor Hill's concern and observations. So the discussion is going back to the Constitution, present Constitution itself. So may I make another suggestion? Kung ang problema po pala ang COMELEC under the present Constitution, bakit hindi na lang tayo maglabi po na maglagay ng bagong batas na i-abolish na ang COMELEC under the present Constitution at i-correct natin ang system of election. So yung suggestion ko is a barangay election approach. Yung barangay election with its own election council will now select the best barangay leader to become the chairman. And then yung mga chairman ng mga barangay ng isang bayan, kung 20 yan, will elect from among them their peers to be who will be mayor. So wala na yung kalukuhan na politika na pinaggagastusan ng mayor na milyon-milyon. Yung mga mayor naman ngayon sa probinsya, sila naman ngayon ang mamili with the recall ang maging governor. Ganon din yung sa mayor, may recall. Well, everybody including the barangay chairman. So ngayon, yung mga governor will now elect their own regional. Kung mag-federalize na tayo, yung regional ko nila, parang regional governor na. And onwards to electing who could be our president. Yun, wala na ho yung mga concern na ni Professor Hill. Siguro, tumbukin na lang natin. Ang problema ang COMELEC. Yung COMELEC po ang babarilin natin sa present situation. Eh kung hindi pa rin magawa yon, then let's continue with our movement for a changing constitution by whatever means.
Well,
Ngayon, ang peace means, agree ako dun kay Professor Hill na this is the only way to be peaceful. The problem is 300 of the 100 million Filipinos, 30% do not really know how to vote kasi they were malnourished. We in the world, we are the most malnourished country. 3 out of 10 is malnourished. How can a malnourished vote the right leader? Kung problema kung minsan sa barangay na nga, nananalo pa yung wala tao dahil yung mga tao hindi nila kini-consider yung qualities and capabilities of the leader. So, marami tayong barangay dyan na nanalo yung walang trabaho pero may pera siya. Ngayon, i-correct na rin natin yun. Yun lang po. Thank you.
can I recognize
Okay, Professor Hill, you are recognized.
the suggestion that you said does not take note of the fact that to be able to do something with the COMELEC, you need to change the constitution. It cannot be done by congressional law. The constitution protects the COMELEC. It is a constitutional body. Only a constitutional change can affect the COMELEC. That is one reason why we are asking for a return to the 1899 Constitution as a triggering factor, because it immediately abolishes the COMELEC in one fell swoop. And it also abolishes the Congress, which is now dominated by political dynasties. And therefore, we can have a good reset button once we go back to the 1899 Constitution. And in that 1899 Constitution, there are provisions for elections. We'll follow that. And the election process, it will be a hybrid of the existing election laws, municipal laws and elections, will be conducted by the military and the Supreme Court, who are now pledged in terms of allegiance to the 1899 Constitution. That is one of the transition scenarios that we have to do. Thank you.
Okay, so anybody in the group can say something?
May I say something? Ben,
Agree po ako doon.
Mr. Astillero, you are recognized.
yung point na to remove the COMELEC, which is a constitutional body, means adopting a new constitution, pwede namang i-amend ang existing constitution if you like, no? And Congress is the body authorized to amend the present constitution.
Yeah.
Ang issue sa COMELEC ay constitutional body ito. Kaya hindi pwedeng pakialaman. Sa India, ang COMELEC hindi constitutional body. It's part of the executive. Kaya pwedeng pakialaman. So, yun lang ang amendment na kailangan natin sa Congress. I-amend yung 1987 Constitution. Ang COMELEC ay hindi constitutional body. Part of the executive body. O, yun lang. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, anybody can say something?
Yes.
Ingel wants to talk.
Mr. Speaker.
Yan,
Mr. Speaker.
Yeah,
Good morning.
yes, good morning.
May iba po ako. I watched the constitutional volcano video presentation by Hill Ramos po kanina. Why it did not happen last year po. Yung 2020 vision. Ito kasi yung video po kanina.
Then what do you mean? What is your point?
Yung constitutional yung presentation po sa PowerPoint po kanina, yung video po.
Yes, can you clarify what is your point?
I'm saying is that Meron kasing Vision 2020 in the video. In the video po, na that shown a while earlier sa presentation.
Okay.
In the last slide.
So ano ang gusto mo ipahiwatig?
Yung ano po, yung kung bakit ano po, di po nangyari yung ano yung constitutional volcano yung gagawin ng 1899, yung 2020 nung last year po.
You mean to say na igawin natin ang nakalagay doon sa slide.
Apo, yung
ang pinag-uusapan dito ay kung paano natin maitinok ang ating sistema sa eleksyon using the COMELEC. Now, pinag-usapan din na amindahan ang ilipat natin sa 1899 Constitution para magiging legal ang gagawin natin doon sa sistema ng ating eleksyon. Okay, Gian. Please clarify your point. Gian,
okay po. Yes,
please clarify your point.
Clarify your point kasi po sa video ay yung constitutional volcano, yung iset up plan po. Yung plan.
Professor Hill, can you please can you act on the question of Gian Bibiano? Professor Hill, can you please act on the question of Gian Bibiano?
Okay. Ian, that presentation was only to highlight what we can do with the 1899 Constitution. That is not an official program to be followed by a body. It is a process of educating the people about what can be done. So those things can just be seen as proposals. Wala tayong commitment doon, wala tayong resolution na ginagawa natin ang mga nandoon. Yun ay para matulungan ang mga kapwa natin mamamayan na maintindihan kung bakit tayo bumabalik sa 1899 Constitution. Yung mga kondon ay yung video yan ay ginawa pa noong I think 2 years ago. Inadapt ko lang yung karamihan doon kasi karamihan naman ay adapt sa atin at wala namang mali. Kaya lang sinasabi mo na dapat na implementa na yon, ayun ay ginawa nila Melchor Magdamo noong pang 2 years ago at hindi pa nila in-update yan ngayon. Pero yun ay hindi isang directive to be implemented. It is an educational presentation to make you understand why we need to go to the 1899 Constitution.
So does that answer your query, Mr. Gian?
Yes po. Yes po, sir.
I mean, does the explanation answer your query?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay.
Recognize mo si Jingle, Mr. Speaker. Jingle would like to.
Jingle, can you recognize?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, you recognize.
I just want to give a response to the previous speaker before Mr. Gian. Regarding amendments of 1987 Constitution, if the problem is only COMELEC. So I will cite our problems in the present. It's not only COMELEC that we have now. First, we have health martial law, medical martial law that some people said. Then next, we have this COMELEC problem. It's because of that Smartmatic. Then aside from that, we still have public utilities that are concerned of other groups. Then we also have federalism that pushed by other groups. That's why they wanted a revolutionary government. So this those problems, that's the way I understand that the transition of the Constitution from 1987 to 1899 is the only one solution for that multiple problems that we have in the present. So if we only amend the same constitution, what will happen? Just like what Sir Posada said, the contamination is still there. So it will keep contaminating and contaminating more and more in the future. So if we adapt the whole system, like what Sir Hill said, that reset button, if we reset the whole system, it's like buying a new appliances, throwing away an old one, is like we start over again. Pero syempre, andun yung amendments. After confusion, siguro yun na, you follow yung ano, kasi it's like using one bullet into multiple birds. That's all po. Hope I explained it clear. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jingle. Anyone? Anyone can say something? Okay. Attorney
Mr. Speaker.
Posadas, you are recognized.
Okay. The COMELEC is only an agency, and it's a independent constitutional body in the current constitution. When you change completely the current constitution into the 1899 constitution, then necessarily, automatically, COMELEC as an agency will be abolished. It doesn't mean that the elections for 2022 will not proceed. There will be a new agency to replace COMELEC. When you replace COMELEC, so goes Smartmatic too. So it will be entirely a new system of administration to conduct the elections. And most probably during the transition, there will be a decree by the Prime Minister. It can be President Duterte or somebody else can decree a new agency to conduct the elections with the most probably the supervision of the Supreme Court and the military to enforce the rules and regulations accordingly by the new agency. And for all you know, the temporary agency will be the Supreme Court to conduct the 22 elections. It doesn't mean that when you abolish the agency in the current constitution, that there will be no more elections, because COMELEC is just an agency. So therefore, completely disregard COMELEC when we change or shift into the 1899 constitution, but we will still proceed with the elections.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Posadas. Anybody can say something?
Ben, pwede?
Yes, Mr. Stellero, you are recognized.
Yung 1899 Constitution is a parliamentary form of government. May Prime Minister kasi.
Correct.
So, today, we don't have parliamentary. We have a Republican, centralized Republican headed by President and his cabinet. And Congress, the policy making is separate from the President, and the Supreme Court is separate. Republican yan, no? Pag nag-parliamentary tayo, we're completely changing the system of governance from Republican to parliamentary. Ibig sabihin, mag-elect tayo ng mga members of parliament, which are actually our congressman. There are 300 of them yata ngayon. And then this congressman will elect a prime minister, and the prime minister will suggest his cabinet, yung mga ministers niya, from among the prime members of parliament or congressmen. Ganun ang mangyayari. Ngayon, ang isang issue na nire-raise ng group na ito ay corruption. Ang tanong ko, will corruption be less with the change of form of government? Kasi ang corruption ay, well, part of it is due to the form of government when it's very loose or highly centralized, no? Ngayon, kung parliamentary, baka nga less kasi you can question the policies and implementation policies during the session of parliament by a no confidence vote, no? So, mako-question mo yun. Niya lang, siyempre yung mga politiko, knowing who they are, they protect each other, no? Kaya ewan ko kung masosolve natin completely ang corruption. Siguro we can reduce it, but not completely eliminate it. So, ang point ko, changing the form of government does not solve corruption. It solves something else, no? It solves representation, transparency, and accountability, but not corruption. Thank you very much.
Mr. Astillero, kung ako ang masunod tungkol sa issue ng corruption, kung ako masunod, regardless what form of government we have, dahil wala tayong death penalty ngayon. So, ang suggestion ko dyan ay for every 1 million na nakorap ng isang public officials, isang daliri ang paputulin, at more than 10 million ang kanyang manakaw.
10.
Putulan niya ng ulo para hindi na makaulit. So, yan ang kasagutan sa corruption. I think there is no other way to stop corruption unless pugutan mo ng ulo ang mga corrupt.
Tama
Okay.
nga. I appreciate that, Ben. Thank you very much. That's
Okay,
good.
konting paliwanag pa.
Okay, Attorney Posadas.
Yung corruption is like a crime. And also, the campaign against drugs. Merong difference between eradication, neutralization, and control. At the very least, sa bagong system, man-neutralize yung panibagong umpisa ng corruption. Pero, insofar as eradication is concerned, there is no form in the world, in a government, na completely walang corruption. Meaning, eradicate completely ang corruption. Just like the war against drugs, you cannot completely eradicate it. You can only control and neutralize it or reduce it. Kasi may panibagong system na ngayon na very transparent na magkakahalata ang kagad na hindi pwede because it's not centralized. At mako-confront kagad sa parliament kasi yung prime minister, yun ang parang presidente, yun ang parang executive officer ng government. Kung meron siyang ginagawa o kanyang cabinet kagad, yung mga cabinet ng members ng parliament, mako-confront sila kagad doon, mahalata sila. They have to be responsive to all questions and order for them to clarify whatever seems to be a starting corruption. So, there will be no eradication of corruption or eradication of crime. We can only reduce and completely reset the ground rules for a government system. Na bago makatungkol ng corruption dyan, mahahalata na, magiging transparent na from the beginning by the members of the parliament themselves and ministers and by the prime minister.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Posadas. Anybody can say something?
Yes, I would like to have the floor.
Yeah, Professor Hill Ramos, you are recognized. Professor Hill? Anybody can say something?
May I say something, Ben?
Okay, Mr. Celleros, you are recognized.
I support the last statement. Sino ba? Si Attorney
Attorney
Crisostomo.
Posadas.
Okay. Sabi. Tama siya. Ang parliamentary form is more adaptable to check abuse and corruption. Kasi during the parliamentary session, halimbawa, merong session 3 times a week, halimbawa, anybody can rise and question. Merong question hour eh. Ang Prime Minister at yung mga ibang ministro. Pwede niyang erase yung corruption issue or abuse issue, accountability, etc. doon. At dapat siyang sagutin nung tatanungin niya. So, more open. Hindi katulad ngayon, our politicians occupy positions with a fixed term. At bago mo sila matanggal doon, ay napakahirap. Impeachment or you file a case in court, etc. etc. Doon sa parliamentary, tuwing may session, pwede mong questionin yung nakaupo. At kung pangit yung sagot niya, ay sasabihin mo sa kanya, ay, no confidence vote, mag-resign ka na. Yan, pwede yun sa parliamentary. Dito sa Republican, hindi pwede yun. So, yun yung advantage ng 1899 Constitution. Parliamentary yun. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, Attorney Posadas, you recognize?
Yes, okay. Thank you, Mr. Artilero. At saka, tama-tama yung sinabi nyo, sapagkat sa parliamentary system of government, magkakahalatan kagad at directly maka-question yung mga policies tsaka mga ginagawa ng mga cabinet ministers. Because yung mga cabinet ministers are members of the parliamentary clubs. At saka ngayon, ang mangyayari niyan, yung mga questions nila, pwedeng ma-control kagad. Hindi na basta-basta makakalusot. At saka it doesn't mean too na nag-change tayo ng completely into parliamentary system of government. Hindi ibig sabihin na yung mga current criminal charges ngayon, yung mga current corruption ngayon, nakakalimutan natin. Hindi, itutuloy yan. Magkakaroon ng transition na commission na magpo-prosecute ng mga yan para leksyon sa mga, well, in a way, it will be a correction and justification for continuing the charges against these criminal elements and the present corruption. Hindi papabayaan yan. Tuloy na ipoprosecute yan para malinisan completely into a new ground rules of governance system.
Just point of clarification.
Okay, you recognize Professor Hill Ramos?
The suggestions of Mr. Astillero are very potent and quite relevant. But I just would like to clarify that the distinction is not between parliamentary and Republican. A republic can also be a parliament. The distinction is between a parliamentary system and a presidential system as far as the executive power is organized.
Correct.
In the presidential system, the cabinet is controlled by the president, and it is coterminous with the term of the president. In a parliamentary system, the cabinet is controlled by the prime minister, and it is only coterminous with the prime minister up to the point where they have the confidence of the people. That is why the point raised by Mr. Astillero is that once no confidence is becomes apparent, that government of the prime minister falls. But even if the government of the prime minister falls, the president remains in office because the president in the French parliamentary system is elected for a fixed term. He is the one who will abolish the Congress or the parliament and call for new elections every time there is a problem. So the president will also be the transitory power every time a government falls, so that the transition between one government to another under a parliament will be stable and smooth. That is the purpose of the presidential parliamentary form. Our 1899 Constitution is like that. And our, what we call provincial departments, are big geographic administrative areas that have the power to tax on their own. So that is like a federal state. At that time, we only have very few major provinces, like the Panay is one whole province, Negros is one whole province, and Guam is another province, the Marianas is another province, Palau is another province. These territories were under what were called provincial departments. In a similar fashion, once we adopt the 1899 Constitution, the remaining jurisdiction that was left to us by the Americans, because they cannibalized most of the territories that were formerly under the control of Spain, will now follow this big provincial department. This time we'll be calling them separate states. So that way, we will have a federal parliamentary system. And the president can be elected immediately in the 2022 elections. There is no barring that because that will just be the first election. And after that, depending on how long this government can be able to form a coalition to have an executive group and the legislative group working together, then there may be a next election right after 1 month because the government has already fallen. This way, we can have a peaceful way para ibagsak ang mga gobyerno na ayaw na natin. Hindi kailangan maghintay ng 6 years, hindi kailangan maghintay ng 3 years. Pag wala na tayong confidence sa mga parliament na yan, members, na gumagawa ng combined executive at saka legislative agenda, kasi combined yan sa parliament, combined ang legislative and executive power under the parliament. Ang separate power lang yung judiciary. Sa presidential system, separate ang tatlo. Yung executive, yung legislative, at saka yung judiciary. Sa parliament, hindi. Magkasama yan. Ang dalawa. Ang isa, separate, yung judiciary. Kaya mas maganda nga para sa ating, sa bansa natin, yung magkaroon tayo, ma-adapt natin yung parliamentary system. At yan ay nakatalaga na. Nandun na yan sa ating 1899 Constitution.
Okay, Milagros Dantay, you are recognized. Milagros Dantay, you are recognized. Can you hear me? Ms. Milagros Dantay?
Yes, I'm Milagros Dantay.
Okay, you are recognized.
I cannot speak to next time. Now I cannot speak. Next time.
Okay. So
Sorry
anybody can say something. Milo Gold 8, can you say something about the Constitution?
Okay. He's not saying anything.
Hindi ko po kasi nag-gets. Hindi ko po nag-gets. Ka-open ko lang. Hindi ko po nakuha. Kaya hindi ko po naintindihan yung topic.
Okay.
Opo. Next time lang po kasi hindi ko pa na makinig lang muna. Salamat.
Professor Hil Ramos, you are recognized.
Well, I think other people who have not spoken here is Melo and also Vilma Riponte. Maybe Diane would like to talk also. And for the information of Milagros, this group is the 1899 Congress revived following the conventions of the 1899 Congress, and we want to bring about the hibernation of the 1899 Constitution as a way to control, as a way to govern the country right now. Yan ang main topic natin dito sa ating Congress. Kaya plenary sessions ang tawag natin. We address each other indirectly by talking to the speaker. So,
Yes.
Mr. Speaker,
Sir.
I would like to say a few things which relate to our purpose of trying to propagate this Congress is that we have talked about us continuing this weekly Congress, and we have meetings every Saturday morning from 8 a.m. to 12 a.m., 12 noon. So the suggestion of people is that every time we have to invite more and more people to join our deliberations. So maybe 5 or 10 more every time. The problem with these notices that I tend to, that's what I notice is that whenever you give them notice like 2 days before, they forget about it. So I think what I do is that I give them notice maybe 3 days before, and then 1 day before, I give them another notice, dalawang notice, at saka kung pwede pa, tinatawagan ko sa PM sa phone ng Facebook para makausap ko. I think that campaign should be done by us. Para sa next meeting, mas marami tayo, para mas maraming point of view, katulad ng point of view ni Mr. Astillero kanina nung nandito siya, nakikita natin ang iba-ibang point of view. At mas nalilinis natin ang mga dumi-dumi o kakulangan ng mga ideya o ng mga proposal natin. Yun lang ang aking suggestion. For the next meeting, let us invite more people.
Okay, that is noted. And Milo Gold 8, can you hear me? Phil Mariponte, you want to say something? Okay, Milagros Dantay, you recognize?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Nawawala ako sa sarili ko, sir.
Narinig kita.
Sir, ang masasabi ko lang, sir, tungkol sa President, sana po, hindi nila obligahin lahat ng tao magpa-injection. Yun lang po ang masasabi ko. Kasi po, katulad ko, senior citizen, tapos may depekto po ako, hindi ko po kaya magpa-injection. Yun po ang masasabi ko sa Presidente. Kasi hindi ko po na-gets ang ano nito kasi ka-open ko nga lang. Hindi ko po siya narinig.
Kaya yan ang pinag-usapan na na-violate ang ating konstitusyon dahil wala yan sa konstitusyon na persahan na magbakuna. Kaya yan ang napag-usapan na kung maari, mapuna natin yan at huwag naman persahan kasi we have also our right. And aside from that, nakita ko rin na doon sa Nuremberg trial, lumalabas yan na walang persahan. Ganon din dito sa UNESCO na may sinasabi rin ang UNESCO na huwag persahin ang tao. So may batas na ganyan, kaya dapat respeto natin ang batas. At even in our constitution, dahil wala yan, huwag naman natin dagdag. Na yung wala sa constitution, dagdagan mo. So because you will violate the constitution kung gawin mo yan.
Thank you, sir.
Milo Gold 8, can you hear me? Phil Mariponte.
Umalis na si Milo Gold 8.
Okay, Milo Gold 8, you are recognized. Milo Gold 8, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sorry, I'm busy on inviting more people. Actually, Milagros Dantay and Phil Mariponte is part of my community. So, and also I am doing live stream in my Facebook page and other destination. So to invite more people here. So as I promised in past meeting that I help to for more people to join in our platform. So that's why I just muted and just listening the discussion. So actually, I am not very well versed enough sa about constitution and history. More on technical tayo, kaya wala ako masyadong ma-share or paabot ng mga ideas sa discussion, but it's point of learning para po makakatulong din tayo sa iba. So yun lang, sir.
Kasi napakinggan ko yung program ni Attorney Aaron at ni na Captain Raybal. Maganda na pag-usapan dahil that is also about constitution. Kaya nabanggit ko because dahil kagrupo mo rin sila, you might say something about that.
Actually, also more on technical only my part and not part of the speaking engagement or no. Kaya wala masyado akong may share.
Okay, noted.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes, go ahead. You are recognized, Attorney Posadas.
Yung sino nagsalita na ayaw magpabakuna dahil natatakot siya sa bakuna?
Milagros Dantay.
Yeah, okay. Ang masasabi natin nito, Milagros, na meron tayong inaantay na grupo dyan na magpapile sila ng petition sa Supreme Court ng itinatawag nilang writ of amparo na as a right of the people to defend themselves, gusto nilang ang Supreme Court to order the executive branch of government to show cause why their implementation of this vaccination and other health implementation against the pandemic is already unconstitutional kasi lagpas na yung national emergency law na dineclare ni President Duterte. Over 6 months lang cumulatively ang effect ng national emergency law. Ilang taon na at ilang buwan na, mahigit na 1 year and a half. So therefore, he's no longer authorized to implement and to order the Department of Health to force people for injection. Especially na wala naman talagang law ngayon. It's just a presidential decree which is already unauthorized. Now, pag nakapag-file ang sa Supreme Court to show cause and order, lahat ng implementation na yan mahihinto. In the meantime, kung sakaling ma-force ka, you have the right to defend yourself. Okay? You have the right to defend yourself. Ang mangyayari niyan sa basic criminal law, magiging assault and battery yan. Kung pipilitin ka, tanganan ng kamay mo, tanganan ng braso mo para injectioning ka, tanganan ng any part of your katawan para pilitin ang baksyonin, assault and battery na yan. So therefore, you invoke the right of self-defense. Bahala na kung ikulong ka nila, but you can defend yourself. Kesa naman, i-defend mo ang buhay mo na nakasalalay.
Yes.
Kung hindi ako magkamali, kagrupo rin nila yan, Attorney Posadas, ang lumalaban na yan, yung gising Maharlika. Nag-usap kami ni Rival na they have to file a writ of amparo.
We will utilize all means. Just go through the motions of filing something legal and constitutional against the executive branch of government, and it's only the Supreme Court or the Supreme Court that can show cause order for President Duterte to freeze what he's doing or his orders. Because after all, it's already a constitutional issue. Lagpas na siya sa kanyang authority. So, even if he is under authority, a person will invoke the right to self-defense. Kung pipilitin ka, that's already assault and battery. Kung sabihin nila, nevertheless, arrestin ka, ikukulong kila, but at least ikukulong mo, i-depend mo lang yung right mo, hindi yung buhay mo. Okay, so under duress, just avoid and refuse. Yan ang part ng civic resistance.
Okay, so noted, and I think may bagong pumasok si Villalos. Do you want to say something? Villalos ba yan?
Wala po.
Okay. Anybody has to say something? May 31 minutes pa tayo.
I'd like to recognize.
Yes, you are recognized, Professor Gil Ramos.
Yeah. For those that have just joined us, the purpose of the group is to be able to sway the leaders of the country to move peacefully into adoption or the hibernation of the 1899 Constitution as a reset button for us. And I also would like to acknowledge the help that Mello Goldate has been giving us. He has been editing some of our videos, and he has been instrumental in sharing this with other groups, with other Facebook groups, and Yellow and the YouTube area also. But there are people like him who just silently are in the background, but helps us spread the message with a wide net, with the technical knowledge that they lend to us in the process of assisting our efforts. So thank you very much, Mello. I acknowledge your help. And thank you. We're very grateful for that. And Mr. Speaker, we had a very good discussion right now. It was some of it could be considered a bit impassioned, but that is really something that you cannot avoid sometimes. But that is good because when you enlighten things, when you light up a fire or have something that exudes a brightness from the darkness, sometimes it is unavoidable that some heat is also generated. That is why, Mr. Speaker, we are adopting the parliamentary system of addressing you in our exchanges. And I hope other people who will be joining us in this Congress of ours would be able to adopt to that practice, so that even if we are passionate in our discussions, we still address each other indirectly by addressing our questions and our replies to the speaker or the chair. Now, the other things that we have to pay attention to now is maybe a process of sharing data that maybe Mellow Gold 8 can assist us wherein data that we would like to share. Like, for instance, in my presentation, I have so much data to share regarding COMELEC information. So perhaps Mellow Gold 8 can create or assist us in trying to make our Google Drive, if we are subscribing to Google Drive, available to each other so that we can store the data there and we can mimic the data availability to government officials that are in power rather than just us, the shadow government structure that we have in the web. As I was explaining to everybody who were interested, we are creating a parliament of the web through these sessions we are doing every Saturday. And we are also mimicking the shadow structure of government. We have a shadow DILG, we have a shadow DOF, Department of Finance, we have a shadow Bureau of Customs, we have a shadow Bureau of Internal Revenue, we have a shadow Agricultural Department under the leadership of Sunny Domingo. We have a shadow Department of Trade, Department of Energy, things like that. And we are in the process of populating this. So maybe Mellow Gold 8 can look at them. They are available. They are shadow _ something in Facebook. That is their addresses. And then we can communicate to other people in our group in the Shadow Congress as to who among them would like to populate these places. And not only populate them with their comments, but more importantly, populate them with data. Because we need data, no? Our opinions have to be based on data, have to be based on facts. Hindi lang opinion lang natin. Kaya ako, I make the effort of, for instance, clarifying concepts, defining taxonomies, so that when we talk about certain things and we use particular jargon in a particular discipline, social discipline or whatever, we are understanding the same meaning of those terms as used in a scientific exchange among social scientists. That's what I try to assist. I do not in any way try to sort of insult the understanding and comprehension of people, but it is best to have a common definition of terms so that when we discuss, we are agreeing on the meaning of things that we use in our discussion. And then the process of building up data in our shadow structures of government is also important so that all our information, all our point of views are based on such facts, hindi lang based on thin air. So mag-usap tayo sa Benham Rice, dapat alam natin ano bang area ng Benham Rice. Mag-usap tayo sa natural resources ng West Philippine Sea, alam natin na doon sa West Philippine Sea, meron ngayon proven reserves na 9 billion barrels of oil at 900 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. Yan ang pinag-uusapan dyan. Pag magsabi tayo ng problema sa COMELEC, alam natin na sa COMELEC mayroong ganitong klaseng number of padded voters dahil sa ating analysis. So ang ating mga opinion ay laging may kabatayan sa katotohanan at sa kung ano nangyayari. Kaya pag ano nang ating magawa, if we're able to achieve these things, what will happen is that we will be more informed and our exchanges here would be much better and more educational than the spin masters or the pronouncements, the empty rhetoric that you'll be hearing from our elected and even appointed leaders. And that is what we're trying to do. Eventually, the truth will set us free, and knowledge will give us power. And that is what we will try to achieve. We will speak to power with truth, and by expanding our knowledge base, we will have to bend these powerful individuals to our point of view, because sometimes they do not even make the effort to educate us. They always make the effort to spin us, to let us understand that they are the better people than the others. They never talk about system changes. They talk about there being a better person than the other person. That is why we have a very personalist politics. What we want is a politics of issues and a confirmation and expansion and elaboration of the facts that we have to deal with as a nation. Yun lang po, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. And Rose, you just come in. Do you want to say something? Miss Rose. Anybody has to say something? So, looks like no one to say something, and probably they are agreeable to what was being discussed. May madagdag pa ba kayo na gusto nyo mapag-usapan o gusto malaman? You are open.
Recognition, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, you are recognized.
Well, since we are about to end this current plenary session, unless any other person would rise with a point of privilege next time, if, for instance, Mr. Astillero would like to address the body with a presentation next time, he's welcome to do it as a point of privilege, a particular point that you would like to share with us. You'll be welcome to do that, Mr. Astillero. If nobody else will be sharing something next time in the next plenary session, which is July 2, I will be discussing as an economist what I would call militia economics. I will make a presentation on how we can rapidly recover from our present economic morass using militia economics, which has been used by countries like the United States, Israel, China, and also the state capitalist economies of Finland and Norway and Spain, and the cooperative state economics of Germany as well. So those are the things I would be discussing, including the militia economics, which Japan also used in their preparation for the war against Russia. In just a period of 30 years, they were able to build a navy that defeated the Russian fleet in 1905. And they continued forward to become a military industrial nation that was able to challenge the United States Pacific control in the 1940s. So these are the perspectives that we would like to do. I'm also continuing research on the vignettes and anecdotes about the record of our 1898 Constitution. But I can be helped by somebody in the country who could be able to research the records that we have in the National Museum about the deliberations, the records of deliberations of the 1899 Constitution, which I think is still in Spanish and has not yet been translated to English. So some researchers have to be asked to assist us in bringing that out. Not many understand, for instance, that the 1899 Constitution was an effort to control the dictatorial powers of Aguinaldo. The misconception of many is that the 1899 Constitution was a creation of Aguinaldo. In fact, it was not. Aguinaldo already had a reputation and has a bad reputation for having been involved or ordering the killing of Bonifacio. That is why the 1896 conflict ended up quickly after a year in a surrender that they had in Pac of Biak na Bato, because Commander Alvarez, or rather the head of the Magdiwang forces in Cavite, Alvarez, he withdrew from the fight. Also with Jacinto, after Bonifacio was killed, he didn't want to fight anymore. So immediately Aguinaldo was surrounded, and he had to surrender in Pac of Biak na Bato. Now that's how they got exiled to Hong Kong. When they got back and then they won with a rejuvenated revolution, with the commander, with Admiral Dewey bringing up Aguinaldo, what happened was he was suspected as somebody who might abuse his power. So the 1898 Congress was immediately convened at the suggestion of Antonio Luna and Mabini to create a constitution. And that constitution was approved by them. This was based on the 1860 constitution of the Cadiz Spanish Congress, 1860, and also the French constitution at the time. Those were the two constitutions that were adopted as a way to draft our 1899 constitution. What happened after that is that they approved it in November 24, 1898, and there was an interregnum wherein there was resistance from Aguinaldo to sign this constitution or to promulgate this constitution. Why? Because he would be less powerful after he does that. But the pressure from fellow delegates and the pressure now of the Philippine-American War, forced him to promulgate it in January 23, 1899. When Aguinaldo promulgated it in 1899, after that promulgation, he surrendered his dictatorial powers and took his oath of office as a president of the Republic. And after that time, his dictatorial powers are now controlled by the Congress. Meron ng check sa kanya. However, despite that, nagkaroon pa rin sila ng power struggle ni Antonio Luna, and Antonio Luna ended up dead. Because Antonio Luna was supposed to become the prime minister, he ended up dead in June, just 6 months after the June 1899, 6 months after the 1899 Constitution was promulgated. This contest for power developed a lot of problems with our leadership at that time, and even Aguinaldo was already desperate, and he almost wanted to resign, and he was even offering the presidency of the Republic if he resigns to Apolinario Mabini, which Apolinario Mabini also declined because of his failing health, being a paralytic. So these kinds of drama, these kinds of things were never known to us, never thought to us in our history, because the Americans have demonized everybody who were involved with our revolution and our fight as a separate nation against them. That is why Aguinaldo was so easily demonized, because he also had real abuses. So up to now, most of us Filipinos don't understand that we had the real nation fighting a war against America, their first Asian war, the first war of America, and a bloody war that is even bloodier by density of population than the war they waged in Vietnam. These histories must be known to our people, Because right now, the jurisprudence and legal references that our lawyers have ends with the American puppet constitution. They do not even follow the jurisprudence and whatever decisions or legislations that was done by the 1899 Constitution, which is our real constitution. So this kind of legal impairment in the education of our lawyers have to be changed. They have to recognize the fact that the American Constitution was an American puppet constitution. The Laurel Constitution was a Japanese puppet constitution. And the 1973 Constitution was a transmogrified 1971 Constitution that Marcos promulgated at that time. And that the 1987 Constitution is nothing more but just an American protectorate constitution based on the kidnapping of President Marcos and based on the resistance and support that they gave to Cory Aquino when Enrile and Gringo Anasan already had control of the Philippine military resources. These are the realities that we have to know. We are not, in a sense, picking up a fight, but we will just have to tell the truth to our people. And that's one of the missions of our group, telling the truth, getting the truth out without bias, without any propaganda against anybody, and also expanding our knowledge base so that we understand exactly where we stand in this crossroads of our history. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ramos, for enlightening the group. And anybody could say something or make reaction to what Professor Hill Ramos had mentioned, which is, I totally agree that it was not being taught in school. Why? Because even President Marcos and Corazon Aquino in the book, they changed the history, which is not the real history of the Philippines. So anybody could say something.
I would like to ask Dingle to comment on that. She being part of the younger group.
Okay.
Sure.
Rose, you recognize.
Dingle, what do you think?
Jingle or Rose, you recognize.
Maybe John Viviano would like to say something. Oh, Mr. Astillero wants to say something. Go ahead, Ben Lorquillo.
Okay, Mr. Celero, go ahead. You are recognized. Please unmute your audio. Your audio has been muted.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay. Well, the presentation of Gil Ramos is very good. It's opening up new vistas of knowledge to us so that we can politically mature. This is a call to arms to really consider the 1899 Constitution to substitute for our present Constitution. It's going to be an uphill fight because most people do not want the change. No, I feel. Even Congress, I don't think Congress will adopt the 1899 Constitution. So it means explaining why the 1899 Constitution should be adopted. And it will be really a big battle for the hearts and minds of Congress and all those government officials concerned and the general public. What we need now is a communication program. I think somebody should write down the arguments, print the 1899, put in the arguments, and as a conclusion, ask for its adoption. We need something in writing, maybe a few pages, because without freezing all of these materials in writing, we'll be just talking and changing ideas and concepts as we talk. Like we'll be meeting again July 2nd. How do we know that we won't change our mind? So somebody should write this down and then give it to as a draft to everybody for improvement. And then go on to several drafts until we can release it to the public and get their sentiment. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your good comment. Professor Hel Ramos, it's now 11:51, and you want to say something more? Because no one is interested to...
Mr. Speaker,
Yes, Attorney Posadas, you are recognized.
Gil, you have to state that there's already been a resolution, a written resolution that's been adopted and resolved last June. When was that?
12.
Gil,
12.
you were the speaker back then. So explain to Mr. Atilero that there is already a written resolution formally announcing our declaration to petition to shift to the 1899 Constitution. And point out that get the website or the Facebook account of Mr. Telero, and we will send him the resolution itself.
Yeah,
Please explain.
Mr.
Okay, thank you. My Facebook name is the same as my name here. So could you please
Emmanuel
send?
Ican Asteliero.
Yeah, that's my Facebook name. Can you
Okay.
send it to me, please, so I can read it? Thank you.
I will, after this meeting.
By the way, before we end, Ben, I must congratulate you for presiding and steering the discussion very well. You said you did not know Robert's Rule of Order, but I think you got it. No, thank you very much.
Well, I highly appreciate your comment. But
Yeah,
I
well
am not
done too, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, the documentation, the purpose of our continued sessions, if you, maybe this has escaped notice by Mr. Asteliero, we really started meeting substantially about these issues, starting with the birthday of Dr. Jose Rizal, June 19. And we will be meeting every Saturday with the plenary Congress, which is this day, 1899 Congress. Every Saturday up to the birthday of Bonifacio, November 30. Then we adjourn for the Christmas break. And then we resume our 2022 sessions on January 8th, the first Saturday of 2022. And then proceeding forward to again May 28th, the last Saturday of May. And those sessions in 2022, if we have elections, will be much more interesting because we will be analyzing the rhetoric and the platforms that candidates will be propounding and advertising to the people, and maybe we will have a lot of fun exposing them as empty rhetoric. So that is why our sessions in 2022 will be more colorful. And by that time, we will have more adherents, and maybe Ben Lorke, by the time, our speaker, Ben Lorke, would have already sharpened his presiding skills, because there will be more polemics, heated polemics at that time. So I thank you again for the effort, and I think in 5 minutes we can begin to begin to wind up our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Hill.
And thank you, everyone.
It was a good session. I enjoyed it.
I doubt what we had been discussed is clear that we are not against the government. We are not against the administration of Duterte. We want only imminent change, because we notice that now the Constitution is no longer restricted. One, in time of emergency, Article 12 was not being implemented despite the implement the bayanihan system. So that is why that is one of the main issues that during emergency the people has to be satisfied. But now the people are asking where we have to get money to pay our electricity, where we have to get money to pay our water, telcos, because they are all jobless now. So our economy is going down and going down. So this is a big issue. And the real problem, if we fail to make a solution to that.
I will be distributing the PowerPoint slides that I made so that everybody can use it for their own presentation, for their own groups. I will be distributing it in our website as well as to the individual Facebook accounts of our friends here.
Yes, please do it.
Thank you. That will help. Thank you. I'm with you.
Yeah, also
And-
this is recorded and this will be it's actually also there. I think Camelo has already broadcast this and live streamed this to other groups. But we have a 1899 underscore Congress YouTube channel, and you will find these proceedings recorded and logged there in that channel. You just put 1899 underscore Congress and that channel will appear in YouTube. And you will find this also if you want to review everything that we have discussed here.
Very
and,
good. Very good.
Aside from that, what you had explained from the time Andres Bonifacio, recognition of 1899 Constitution, the death of Antonio Luna. So if Milo can make some what we call this PowerPoint, so that is much better to rather than to explain only, because when it is very clear to the people who could read and could see it. So I doubt what we want into is clarification. We do not challenge anybody to create whatsoever. But what we want is peace, love, and let our economic grow. Thank you.
Yes, yes, Mr. Speaker, I am in the process of preparing a lot of PowerPoint slides because to me that is a portable way of communicating with our people and that can easily multiply our reach and more people will understand what we are about.
Mr. Astilleros, your audio, it's not unmuted.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed the session. 4 hours. I've never stayed that long in any program. Thank you. Thank you.
Maraming salamat din sa inyo, Emmanuel Astillero. Salamat ng marami.
Salamat. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Professor Hill, can you make a closing remark?
Well, I am happy that everybody here is enthused about what we are about. We don't have to be a big group to start with, but like a snowball, as we roll over down the mountain, we'll become big enough to crush all the opposition against us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Salamat po. I will see you again, and I hope to see you again next July 2. In our
July 2.
Yes, July, same time.
Okay.
Same
Yes,
time.
Same time.
Next week, Saturday.
Okay. Thank
Salamat
you.
po.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
No one could comment more, then let's adjourn this session and let's meet again on July 2. Thank you, everyone.